Hello my beautiful badgers, Messi Coda, back again with another live dev interview. Don't worry, it really is I, Messi Coda, back from a prolonged sick leave, and I brought with me my sexy sick voice. In this video I'm joined with Jason Booth as we talk about Microverse, his non-destructive real-time environment creation system. It blew me away with its no baking, that's right, no waiting, no preview windows, everything is live and updated in real time. This is not just an interview, it's actually a tutorial. It's a tutorial review. That's going to be a new word. I'm going to put it in the dictionary. So sit back, enjoy, and I'll see you all in a moment.
There you go, you're live. Do not say fudge or bugger.
Oh, we're not allowed to cuss?
No, you're just not allowed to say fudge or bugger.
Oh, okay.
Last time I spoke to you, you were on a beach playing on a beach with people around a campfire or something, wasn't it?
That's an island house I go to. It's literally a house that's the same size as, there's no land really. It's just sitting in the middle of the ocean. And it's a crazy place. It's called Clingstone if you Google it. But I go out there every year in the summer and we basically just play music, cook food, and like hang out on this island rock house thing. And it's super fun, and it sleeps 30 people quite easily. So we can have quite a party out there for a week or two.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm telling the wife where I'm going next then.
Yeah, it's quite a place. This year, James Taylor came over to the house while we were there, and that was kind of funny. But he had just built a house on the shore right where the dock was, and so he could see this house. And he was like, was friends with somebody who knew the caretakers and basically like asked if he could come over. And so I ended up hanging out on the roof with James Taylor for a while. And then when he left, there's a big tradition to moon people when they get too close to the house. And so when he left, he was like on the boat and waved, goodbye to us because we were still up on the roof. And I was like, shit, I should moon him. And then like I thought better of it, and now I'm just kicking myself for it because it was probably get to moon James Taylor. So,
I thought this story was going to end with you mooning him, and was going to this was going to be how we were going to go viral. This was the best marketing for Microverse !Microverse in chat, by the way, that you could have hoped for. But no, you blew it. Not only did you blow mooning him, you blew your viralness.
I'm sure that would make it go viral.
Yeah.
Should we talk about Microverse?
So that's what you've been up to since we last chatted. Good to know.
Basically Rowan came to me and he was like, frustrated with all of the terrain editing tools and stuff, and was like, will you make something? And for ages I'd been like, no, I don't feel like it. And then I just had quit contracting on a job that I'd been on for like 7 months or something. And I was like, all right. And so I built Microverse just kind of on a whim. And it was one of those projects that sort of came together really well. And then it was fun to work on because it was coming together really well. And yeah.
Oh, hang on. How do I get back to my browser? Now that I've made you full screen, I can't actually get back. There we go. I couldn't actually load a web browser anymore. I was trying to be all professional, right, and show Microverse as you were talking.
Well, I can just put it up here.
But yeah, well, yeah, you can do it like that. But that's not the store page, you see.
No.
Hang on. Let me try and be semi-professional. And I didn't even do like a proper intro yet. We're just like, hey, you're live. Don't say fudge or bugger.
Do you want to do an intro?
So should I do an intro and then we can edit it backwards, right?
Nah, that's never gonna happen.
And then I'll take the beginning part in the editor and then I'll put it after the intro. That is professional. Oh my word. Hang on. Okay, that works. And then chat window. Okay, there it is. All right, so everybody sitting at home in front of your Google watches, your microwave PCs, and your Alexa computers of the future. Give a warm and microversy welcome to Jason Booth, the creator of the long thought out and well planned Microverse. Hey, buddy. Welcome back to the stream.
Yeah, it's been months.
What have you been up to? And cut. See, there you go. Professional. Look how good we are. Now, it's on the sale at the moment, right? And it said that the 30% intro sale ends today.
Okay.
If you were aware of that, or you weren't aware of that.
I mean, I think I was aware of that because I set the timer on it. But again, you know, I don't pay too much mind to that stuff.
I was going to say, like, do you remember doing that?
I do. I vaguely remember doing it.
Oh, you got reviews already. Let's have a look at some of the reviews. So, Wallraff Games says, with this asset, you can work on terrain height map by stamping. You can scale, rotate, move the stamps. I highly recommend to use it with Roland ink stamp packages. Plug for Roland, ! Roland in chat. You can get beautiful terrains in just a few minutes. Work on terrain texturing, add layers, add texturing rules, and view the results in real time. I just did a quick test with height, slope, and curvature based texturing. Results is amazing. Welcome Vegetation. I haven't tried for now, but what I've seen in videos looks great. There you go. Another 5 stars. Roland's given. It would be funny if Roland had given you like 3 or 4 stars or something.
Oh, 1 star.
Yeah. Top bit. Lot of good reviews in there.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think when people use the program, it's sort of next level in a lot of ways where you're like, oh, I don't need to do all this other stuff anymore. And then the other thing about it is that it has like a very small UI footprint for what it does. And so you don't have to learn a whole lot. Once you learn a few things, basically it's just that everywhere. And
okay, this is what I'm worried about. Like, is this going to be, because I loved World Creator. I had them on the stream a few times. You've watched those. Really sweet people, lovely people.
Yeah.
But every time, and I've used it quite a few times, and I get to the point where I want to start being very detailed with World Creator, and then I have to keep going back to Tyler's videos to remember what I'm doing. Now, I also Terrain Composer 2, so much better than the Terrain Composer 1. Terrain Composer 2, another great asset, world creating asset, but I had to go back to the videos every 3 seconds if I want to use it again. And Gaia, I can make quick, easy terrains in Gaia, but I can never really remember how to really customize it to that level of detail that I want.
Right.
Now,
I don't know. I mean, I can't speak for you, but
it's because I'm an idiot. We all know this. But,
and the thing is like, you know, this can actually integrate with other tools and stuff. Like you can still paint on the landscape. You can still bring stuff in from other tools. In fact, like, you know, like World Creator is an interesting one because they had the Unity version, but really the standalone version is where all the cool stuff is, right?
which is actually made.
Is it still though? Okay, I know they originally did that, but I thought they had ditched that renderer a long time ago and just switched their own. But maybe
I don't
maybe
know.
not.
Did they?
But they have a great, like, you know, their erosion algorithms and things like that are really great. And so, you know, like a lot of the stamps you see out there are just, you know, created in World Creator standalone and then brought into something like this. And then for this, I really wanted to keep this like non-destructive workflow idea going. So from the because what happens a lot in a real world production is you spend all this time, you get an area looking like just like you want, and then the designer's like, actually, we need that over there on this other part of the map. And there's not really good ways to do that in most of these packages. And so this keeps everything non-destructive, and you can kind of move things around. You can actually copy and paste bits of the terrain. You can and then move those around and they'll blend into the terrain and things like that. So, you know, I've been in the industry for a long time, and I try to make things that will go all the way to ship, right? Where you can edit up to the last minute and stuff like that.
Can you do me one favor? Just remind everyone, because it always blows my mind, but just remind everyone, just some of the games you've worked on back over the years?
I mean, the most famous ones are Asheron's Call, which is like one of the first MMOs, and then Guitar Hero and Rock Band series, Dance Central. I've done a lot of games, but those are probably the biggest ones.
You've been
And
around.
yeah, I mean, I've been in the industry for I think it's about 30 years now, and sold I don't know how many million games, but a lot, and and I've done pretty much everything in the game industry you can do on the production side, right? Like so, my background's in music. I was the art director at Turbine for a while, and I was in charge of the core engine development at Harmonix. So design that tech stack from up and down, and so yeah, I've built shader graphs, built all kinds of stuff, visual scripting systems and written renderers, done everything. So
And you've taught a lot of people shader stuff. You were doing that training for a long time, weren't you?
On that to companies. So I used to at Harmonix, I would have all the artists there and teach them how to use a shader graph and because part of the job of designing the technology is getting people to understand how to use it. And so I always loved rolling out the new tech and sort of working with all the artists to get them to understand how to, organize things or do things in more efficient ways and stuff like that. So, and these days I mostly do, contracting and optimization stuff. I worked on Population One VR to help bring that down from a PC game to a Oculus 2 game or Oculus One game, and they did crazy stuff to get that to work. But I sort of helped them a little bit with that, and then did the planet renderer for Kerbal Space Program 2, and got that from this sort of big object-oriented, really slow to update thing to running entirely in compute shaders and burst for it takes like a millisecond a frame now, and got rid of all the weird jankies it had. So yeah, I've done all kinds of stuff.
So when it comes to knowing what should be in an asset that help you make your game, a thing or two.
I think so.
Yeah, which is good to have. Now you mentioned your shader. So is there a load of shader shenanigans going on in here?
Oh yeah, always.
So does this?
You just crush CPUs for work.
Are we still able to use your better lit shaders and all the other stuff and the microsplats with this?
It has direct integration with microsplat. Like if I go over here, if you have it installed, I can just hit a button to convert to using microsplat instead of using Unity shader. It does come with a little bit of a annoyance, which is that microsplat is a texture array based shader, and so when you add new textures, it needs to repack those arrays. Whereas with the Unity train shader or one that isn't texture array based, you don't have to do that. But it all integrates in and works well together. And everything's multi-terrain. I'm working on 4 terrain tiles right here. And so, yeah, you can see there's 4 terrains. Everything works across terrains. Everything's fully biome centric. So
I was about to say, this is a must now. It's 2022 coming to 2023.
Yeah, and it's fully non-destructive, which I think is the big feature. So if I go to the paths here and select the village one, here we go. So this uses Unity splines for it, which is introduced some complications because they're not really available yet. They're still in preview.
Could I share my screen while you do this a second? Because I need to redeem myself over the earlier shenanigans that I spoke to you on Discord. So if you've imported Microverse and you're like me, you briefly look for a README, but then when you stumble across errors in your project, instead of trying to find the README, you just go and start Googling random errors, or trying to contact various asset sellers of assets that you've put in your asset. Then you then you know that's not the right way of doing it. You're supposed to read the READMEs. Now, in my defense, I have to say that And while my Unity is still trying to load because it's just crashed and it's reloading again. Go to your project folder.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if you scroll up, so people can see whereabouts you are. Right, you're in the packages, right?
Yeah.
Section. Okay. Now, whenever I look for a README, I've just become lazy in that I'm thinking that the README is going to be in the asset section. I don't immediately go into the packages section. And when I do go into the packages section, oh, here we go. Mine's just loaded up now. Here we go. So you got the Microverse folder, okay, where the README is in the micro. Now that's where I went into the README of the Microverse folder. So that one is the one where I was like, this is where I'm assuming the READMEs are going to be, but they're not. They're in the splines.
Sure, but it's also listed in the asset store listing, and if you would open the documentation,
of course, if I'd gone that way,
no, I agree,
and done it as you'd expect a sane person to be, then I would have found it immediately. And granted, the error that came up was talking about splines in the error message, and I would have gone
duplicated into the main thing as well. But it's like the bottom line is people just don't read.
Yeah, exactly.
They just don't. And it's almost like no matter how many times I copy at places, I still get people every day being like, how do I, and you're like, just read the docs, read the fact,
You need to export this lovely zip. If you're using 2021, you need to export this lovely zip file here somewhere on your computer. And then you go to your package manager. If it eventually opens up for me, if I got OBS running on my machine, then Unity decides that it doesn't want to do anything, which is always a good idea when you want to be streaming and using Unity live on the stream. There you go. I click package manager. Now Unity's frozen again. Wonderful, beautiful. Thank you. It's great to be back. It really is. It's wonderful to be back. Do you mind going to your package manager for a moment just to show people where they click on the little plus to import in?
Oh, sure. The package manager is not the friendliest thing. This little plus up here, you just do add package from disk. Packages I actually really like. The package manager, not so much.
There we go. Mine's finally. Unity's finally woken up.
My screen, or?
I'm on your screen again.
All right, so I'm gonna
make Barak says it's also in the core PDF. There you go. We've already established people don't read things.
I probably put it even more.
You need it tattooed on people's foreheads.
Right. So I'm just gonna create a train and just start from scratch, and kind of show you how this works.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I've also put into my project to try and do the same thing.
Okay. You want to just follow along and you do your thing and I'll do mine, and you can ask questions or.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to try and copy your steps as you're doing it. Right.
All right. So first thing, we're just going to create a Microverse from the menu here. This is just a component. You could create a game object and stick it on there or whatever.
Yeah. So what? Right click in Microverse and create Microverse.
Yeah.
Okay, I can
do a little easier than having to find the component.
I can do that. I'm in. I wonder if I can split screen my screen and your screen.
I don't know. I can't see the stream anyway, so that would.
I'm going to try and add in. Keep talking.
Okay, I'm just gonna create some neighbor trains so we have like 4 of them for a little more space. And then what I'm gonna do is parent them to the Microverse, because basically Microverse, the way it operates is it works on everything from the hierarchy, is for like ordering, layering, things like that. And maybe I'll create a little parent game object just for these. You don't have to, but I can just create an empty parent and then call this terrains just to organize it a bit.
Streamer saying, these are really small screens you're making now, Messi. Like, oh yeah. There was a flaw to my master plan.
Is because now you have two screens.
Because now I have two really small screens on on the stream rather than your really big one. Yeah, I won't do that. Let me go back to sugar bombs. I nearly swore. Undo delete. Okay, hang on. Remove this one. Make Jason big again. Here we go. This might be some touch screens. Hello, by the way. Hi, Jason. Hello, Lona Wolf. I also had a couple of questions. Chris was asking, does Microverse have a Gaia add-on ability?
For what? What would you add on?
Yeah, he didn't go into details, but it would be good to know. And Google says, does the Ultimate Bundle also include the core collection? Do they overlap?
Well, the Ultimate Bundle is Microsplat, which is the shader, not Microverse, which is the terrain creation system. They're different products.
Basically, the Ultimate Bundle is the Ultimate Bundle of Microsplat, not the Ultimate Bundle of Jason Booth's collection of assets. Correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. There you
go. Are you ready?
I am ready. I'm not gonna try and follow along now.
If you go to Window, okay. So I don't need to show you every little thing.
No, basically, do you know what? You still have to show every little thing. You know what?
Sure,
I am going to follow along.
Have to make sure that you're
I'm going to follow along, but I'm just not going to show it. And I'm going to show it at the end to see if I ballsed up.
Okay.
Right. So you created some terrains, didn't you?
I created 4 terrains using the Unity tools to connect them, and then I opened the content browser, and I already had it docked down here.
Do you mind redoing that one step? Well, because I was doing
which step?
Everything from the beginning so far.
Everything?
Yeah, from the beginning so far.
Okay. So, all right. So I delete that. Let me close this. And then go to Game Object, Microverse, create Microverse.
Yep.
Let's create some terrains.
Oh, by the way, I can't. Oh, you're sharing your. I can't see your pop-ups.
Oh. Okay. Well, it's under Game Object, Microverse, create Microverse.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go ahead and create a terrain.
Okay.
Which is here. And then I'm going to parent that terrain to Microverse. And I'm going to go ahead and use the Create Neighbors tool to make it bigger. So I have 4 of them. And I need to make sure they're all parented to Microverse.
I've right-clicked Game Object, Create Terrain, and my Unity's frozen.
So strange.
My computer hates me for being away for so long.
Any idea what it's doing?
No idea. But you know what? I'm glad I'm sharing your screen and not my screen, because this is wonderful.
All right, I'm going to carry on then.
Please do.
Well,
now, are you going to use Roland stamps to stamp this out?
Yeah, he's got some free. I'm going to use the Stamp It examples, which are basically like a collection of really nice free stamps that you can actually find in this content browser. So anything you don't own stamp-wise, like shows up in here, and you can click on it, and then it'll take you to the asset store if you want it. But you can also you can create your own stamps as well. You can do anything you want really. So what I'm going to do is, now I've created these 4 terrains, is I'm just going to drag out some stamps here. So you drag them on. Again, it's all real time. I'm going to make this thing a lot bigger. Let's say there. And we can just drag this around, rotate it, scale it, whatever we want to do to get the look of the terrain we want. So
what's the biggest stamp you've ever put? Like, how big have you gone?
You can do whatever you want. It's just it's just data, so it doesn't really care. Like there's a 3,000. I've just spread it over 3,000 meters, so I can scroll and take a bit of it or whatever, and then I can I don't know. Let's put this Highlands one on here. So I can layer stamps to get the effect I want. They have different blend modes, so for instance, and different fall offs. So if we look at the stamp here, you can see its mode add is right now, but we have different overwrite modes like multiply and subtract, etc. So you can do those types of operations. Usually I just take max meaning whichever stamp is higher. And so you can just like move the stamps around and get the max of the two, and they'll blend. And then they have different fall offs. Like this is using a box. You can do a range-based fall off, which makes it like a cylinder, and you can control, that fall off or whatever. So you can stamp out your train, and I think most people have probably seen this type of stamping type operation, but this works for everything. For instance, I can come over here and add the texturing that I want, and if I come in here and let's just make this a little higher, you can see it's like auto texturing it now. And this texture stamp is currently set to be global, but it too could just be in a range. And it's really tiny right now. So, but if I, said, okay, 1,000 meters, right, circular range, and then I can set the fall off and shape and stuff. I can basically that's how like biomes work. You can have spline-based areas. You can have, you can attach things to spline paths, etc. But I can just treat this as like the global text-based texturing or whatever. And then, as I move and change my stamp or scale it or whatever, and add more stamps, it's just going to texture itself, how I tell it to. And I could even add, like, this is an alpine stamp. And again, I'm going to scale it let's do like, that has a parent scale on it. And then that's, going to override the texturing that is below it, right? So if I move this stamp over here, you're going to see that it's texturing it now with like snow and those types of things. And again, if I can go back to my like height stamps and drag in whatever I want, scale it up, it's going to be textured by whatever stamp I've thrown down here. Or I can just delete this and delete. And then, yeah. And so like, everything's really, really fast. And then you can do the same thing with like vegetation. So for instance, here's a cluster forest that I created. And again, I can scale that stamp up. I can make it bigger, and it's going to follow the various rules of that stamp.
How did you create your cluster forest?
Well, I can go through that. So this is basically set up to only happen in certain heights and to not happen on like steep cliffs and stuff, right? So you can see even though the stamp is overlapping this area, it's not putting trees there. And this is actually just a prefab of an actual stamp. And this stamp basically, like, I can change if I want, less density. Well, it's way too less, or more density. Really crank it up to get more trees. And then what it's doing is it's using a whirly noise, and you can use different types of noise, but you can also use like textures if you want. And this noise is just making like polka dots. And so it's placing stuff in these like little clusters from those polka dots, right? But then what I have is I have it set up on the tree itself. And I got this little, there we go. There's a size multiplier based on the weight of the effect, which is like that, again, that polka dot. So on the edges, I'm making the trees smaller. And what this does is give us these like nice clustered clumps here where you get the big older trees in the center and then you get the little trees around, right? Which is kind of like how, a tree will grow somewhere and then spawn its offspring. And so it keeps getting bigger and the other ones around it get smaller. And again, all this stuff is like real time. So like right now it has a height filter and a slope filter. And the same's true like this texturing. If I decide I want the texturing to be different, let's look at that grassy rocks. So this is basically, again, it's a prefab of these stamps. And what I've got here is that on the top, it says use a global fall off. And I can change this to spline area or range based or use a texture to define how I want it to fall off. And then it's got these different textures on it. So at the base here, it's doing a rock stamp. And we can see that it has some slope filtering on that, which doesn't. Oh, so the slope filtering is basically keeping it off the grass. And then here we have a grass a grass one, and it's doing some slope filtering as well, etc. And then he's using some noise here to filter, plus slope and curve. And then what does his rock have? Same thing. So he's kind of mixing up the textures.
How are you doing it so it's so fast in the editor?
I know how to optimize things. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Like, honestly, most of the industry doesn't understand how to write fast code, and this is kind of the burst thing that Unity's been on, is trying to figure out how to make it so that other people can do that easily.
So does it use all the burst compiler stuff and dots
it's
and all that shenanigans?
Done on the GPU, but it does use burst for some operations, but it's mostly done on the GPU. There's not really a lot of CPU stuff going on here.
So does that mean you need to have a really fancy graphics card then? Still,
I mean, I'm on a laptop.
You're just showing off now because my computer's falling apart.
Right. So,
so can you then have, like, when you made your tree cluster, so it's going small trees, big trees, are you able to define then which different types of trees you're gonna have in and the ratio of which different trees are spawning in those clusters, or is it not that detailed?
You can do so. You can have. Let me go. I guess I'll go over stamps individually.
Yeah.
So we can explain like where they all are. So the height stamp I went over a little bit. Why is my inspector not updating in my mouse lock? Sometimes Unity gets stuck where it thinks you're in mouse look mode the whole time. So the stamp takes a texture, which is an R16 height map, essentially. And so Roland's got a ton of those on the store, and there's free ones and stuff. You can scale and offset it if you want to like tile it or something. You can even like here's a fun one. I just put this on for fun. Twist. So you can twist up the stamp. And I'll probably add more effects like this at some point, but you can basically like, mess with how the stamp is applied, which is kind of fun. And then you can these fall offs you'll see them everywhere. Box is basically a square fall off with a feathered edge if you want. Range is circular. You can use a texture to define that, or you can use a spline area. So you can basically click down a spline, close it, and be like, hey, forest appears in this area, right? And then if I go to like the texturing here, it's using a fall off override right now, which means the fall off is up here. It's set to global. You get some extra options as you kind of go through these. So with the height stamp, you get a certain number of things, but you start to get more options as you have more data to work with. So texturing happens later, and it can do a global effect, whereas like height maps don't really have a global concept. And if we look at the texturing stamps, so I have the weight of the layer, which I can like ramp up and down to get rid of that texture. And let me find one that's really, yeah, so you can see the rock sort of blending in and out that he's got kind of noised in here with this noise function. You can filter, so I'm just going to turn this off for a minute. You can like noise any of these things up to kind of create some variation. But what I like to do is mostly focus on context-aware things. So for instance, like having a height range that you can specify and be like, hey, I only want this texture to go up to, 80 meters tall. And let me actually just start with a fresh one so we can...
So I notice you got the slope in it, because Barak's saying would be great for height stamps range to also have slope off range smoothing like the vegetation stamps.
Yeah, you do. It's all the same system kind of used everywhere. That's what I meant earlier when I was talking about having a small UI surface, because once you understand how fall offs work and how filters work, then those exact same things are used in vegetation, in detail rendering, etc. So usually what I do is I put the first layer down as like the base layer, right? And then I'm just going to put some grass over this, and I'm going to grab a grass texture here. So by default, it's just going over everything. It's like, if I had no alpha in a Photoshop channel, right? If I put a noise on this, and I gotta, you can see that the noise here that we have, and I can offset this, right, is projecting on this. There's these little preview things, so you can actually preview what anything looks like. There's different types of noise, and again, you can use textures to do that noise as well. If you have like a texture with a very specific pattern you want. Height range, we can come in here, we can say, great, this appears up to 80 meters and has a 20-meter fall off on the bottom and a 20-meter fall off on the top. In this case, I've limited the grass to the lower part of the terrain. And then we can come over here and we can do the same thing for slope. And I can say, and let me go and turn off the height filter. If I just wanted this to appear on the slope, then I turn on the slope filter and I set the angles that I want it to appear on. And now it's only appearing on the flats. But if I moved it up, it would only appear on the hills, right? So I can basically just interactively figure out where I want these things. I can use the preview to show me exactly what the curve I'm doing is doing. And then again, I have the smoothing on the top or the bottom. So if I put like a really wide smoothing on here, or like, I don't know, 30, or let's try a little less, you can see it's like taking 20 degrees worth of fall off, right? So I'm going to turn this one off, and I can turn on angle, and angle is like directionality. So I can put this only on like the north side, right? So now it's only on the side facing this way. So if you wanted to do like snow that's only shows up on one side of the mountain,
Ooh,
because
I like that.
right, that's kind of what angle's for. And then finally you have curvature, and curvature is based on the convex or concave areas. So you can see on like a really nice height stamp of a mountain, it's going to put it in the cracks or in the or on the tops, right? And I can play with this. And again, same fall off as before, it's just in that curvature amount. So you're seeing the same things all over the place in terms of like, oh, it's that thing again. I know how to use that. And then any of these you can add noise to as well. So you can noise up and be like, okay, I wanted this height range, but I kind of want it noisy and kind of approximate on the edges because I don't want to like, have it be perfect, right? And so that's like,
so you can say this only at this height and this slope and this angle and this.
And if it's in a convex area or a concave area, right? And so you can set up your, and you can, just make more and more layers. And again, because everything has fall off, everything can be based on just an area, right? Like if I was to take this grass stamp and let me get rid of this fall off component so we can set them all individually. So now
Teams
it has its
saying
own.
that we've got 15 minutes left.
Wait, we have a time limit?
Apparently, on the free version of Teams. So we'll just stop and start the call again if we get cut off. Don't worry.
Okay. So like if I want to, I can make this grass layer, something I move around and I put it in a certain position, right? It doesn't have to be over the whole terrain. It can be anywhere. And that's the same.
And I can just copy it and paste it somewhere else.
Yeah, or you make a prefab of it. I mean, all this like alpine texturing thing is just a prefab we made of, 5 layers of texture or 4 layers of texture or whatever. And then you just like quickly make a terrain, slap the texturing on it, and then you're like, great, now I want to add these trees. So you can see the trees are also in a range-based fall off, but I can go and I can like click down a spline and stick it in there if I want. And you can see here, it's all the same stuff, right? We're a range-based fall off. We're using noise, a whirly noise on the overall volume. We've restricted it to certain heights and certain slopes. And then I can have some number of trees, and each tree gets a bunch of properties about how big or small it is and how it should be scaled and randomized, and whether it should basically like the size on the border is great for like if you're going to have clustered trees and you want them to do that thing where it's like big in the middle, then that's what that does. And again, I can change this and it'll all update, right? If I just get rid of now they're all the same size all the time, right? It's 4 times size. So, because I can go the other way, right? So at 1, these are all, well, they're not all the same size, but there's no multiplier based on the weight. So you can see that the trees around the edge of the cluster grow the same rough size, right, as the other ones. And that doesn't look as cool as when you take this down and you're like, okay, put the small ones on the outside.
Now it looks real.
Right? Yeah. And, you know, again, you can supply textures instead of, like, if you don't like procedural noise for this, you just make a texture what you want, throw it in there. And this basically maps to the Unity terrain system. And then I have the same thing for details. So if I want to put down some grass, and let me, I think
so while you do that, let me ask Barak. Barak, does that actually have the functionality that you want, or is it something else that you're looking for? Because that's got like height and slope off and the fall off. So is there something additional that you'd be looking for that's not doing? Now, as you've got all this grass and trees and things, does this do all of the GPU instance shenanigan that you would have in Vegetation engine and all that?
Are currently using Nature Renderer for that.
Okay.
I may write one of those modules. Like, one thing that would be nice about having my own is that, like, you'll notice that when I do edit a setting with like the grass, you know, or like the trees or whatever, it like waits until I'm done editing and then updates. I could get rid of that. That's because the Unity Terrain API is really, really terrible. It was written before they even had like bytes because they did, you know, they were JavaScript and Boo based, right? So it's like written ages ago, and it's clunky and terrible. If I could go direct from the GPU right to the instancing system, then all that would go away and it would be even faster to update. So I might write one, but right now most people are just using Nature Renderer. Maybe some people are, I don't know if at least people haven't told me they're using other stuff for it yet, but any of them should be able to work if they can take data from the terrain. And that actually speeds up the rendering a lot, which is nice. But wait, there's more.
Right, 1 second. So Barak, his problem was, you know, when you put down that circle, right? Mm-hmm. It was a sharpness around the edge of that circle.
Which circle?
The line around the mountain. Yeah. So
that's the stamp.
So he can't. There's smoothing on all stamps, but I can't see it on the height map stamp. He says.
Oh yeah, it's right here. This range fall off, right? Same thing. I can take that all the way down if I want. I can control, you know, how much I can make it like sharp. So it's like this stamp, you'll notice, is just a bunch of noise. It doesn't have like a fall off. What I find is nicer is to have stamps that have a fall off built in. So if we look at, there's going to be ones, actually the ones in the examples, like this rugged rock stamp is a little nicer in that way because when I place it, you see it's falling off. It goes to black in the stamp, and then I don't want to twist it.
Twisty.
So let's just scale this guy up.
I want to know the use case that you actually were thinking of when you just added twist, or was it just a random? It would be weird if I added twist.
I was basically just putting an example in there. I think there is some use of it. I mean, like, you know, if you use it subtly, right, like you can kind of shape this thing a little bit, which is nice, and get variation that way. Like you don't have to go, you know, extreme on it. But, you know, it's like you can have a straight mountain ridge and then just kind of twist it a little bit, which is nice. But the point is I can add more and more effects to things like height stamps if we, you know, want different things with them. So yeah, so the system is just kind of throwing all this stuff together however you want. And the quality of your data for height stamps matters. And so, you know, having good height stamps is great. And also the order in the terrain really matters. So you'll see I added this after all the texturing. That made it not, yeah, no, it'll still use the texturing. Sorry, I'm getting confused in my own head, which happens.
we're being raided.
What? Oh, we get warning?
We're getting raided, but the alerts aren't coming up to tell me who. Simple game dev. There we go. To go into the room. Thank you so much for the raid, buddy. How you been? We are stamping at the moment.
So you can build these little networks of stamps as prefabs. So for instance, this is a house that has texturing and clearance with it. So it will push the train around and pull it around, right? So I can like take that and move it wherever I want. And it's going to carve itself into the mountain over here.
I still can't understand this whole non-destructive stuff, right? So how does this then impact with physics and colliders and...
How do you mean?
I mean, because you're manipulating the terrain.
Yeah.
But I can just pick this up and move it elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it hasn't actually gouged a massive hole in the terrain using like if I'm painting the terrain and stuff.
Well, because it can regenerate the terrain from anywhere, right? Like it's fully able to reconstruct everything that it needs to build the train from scratch. So it just rebuilds the train from scratch with your changes. And then if you change those changes, then it rebuilds it again. So it's, you know, I don't have to like undo my work over here to move it over there.
This is witchcraft though, isn't it?
No. So yeah, so right now I have an include trees stamp on here. This is what's called an inclusion stamp, and it can prevent things that happen later from happening. So, and if I move this up before the forest and stuff is applied, it should include, there we go. Now it includes the details. So you can see it's getting rid of the grass in this area as well. So now I always have a house that won't, you know, be overgrown.
But you got to move it for it to wake up that you've changed the layers of the order of the layers.
Oh, yeah. There's a couple places where, well, there's a bunch of places right now where you have to jiggle the handle on something, and I need to do a pass through those because it's like you get a call back from Unity, like in some cases, but not others, and so it's like, okay, well, you know, I know if you delete something, like if I delete this house, it's going to repair the train because I have a hook in there that says like, hey, if the hierarchy fundamentally changes in this way, then rebuild everything. But I've still got to find more places to hook those in so that, you know, you never have to like tap a control to get it to update or whatever. And then, you know,
could you use this real time in the actual game? Could I start applying stamps and things in the game as though I'm putting down a house?
Time. You know, obviously it works in real time. You're seeing it here. But I'm not going to officially support that as like a workflow. I will fix things that are broken about it if I find them. But the reason is that if I say, yeah, this works in real time, then somebody's going to try and like ship a mobile game on a low end Android with like a fully dynamic changing world and then blame me for the problems, right? If you're going to put this in a game, like this would make a fantastic in-game level editor, right? Then you need to know a little bit more about how it works and manage things like memory. Like these are 4K stamps right now that we're using, right? So if you just like naively load up hundreds of them, you're going to blow out memory, right? So, you know, I kind of, it's one of these things that it's like I don't want to officially support it because it'll be a support nightmare with people just assuming that like they can do anything they want, right? And the reality is like, hey, you know, it takes a lot of GPU to update this. So like if you're going to do a train editor or like something with this, then you need to understand your minimum spec. You need to understand how high a detail you go and all these types of things. So right now what happens is when you enter play mode or you build, it strips all the Microverse data from the scene for you automatically. But if you delete that script, then it'll actually just run in the game. And then if you move like a stamp, it'll all update. So yeah, that's kind of my stance on it is like, yes, it works, but like
you got to know what you're doing, do it yourself.
You got to know what you're doing. Yeah. Don't just like think you can do anything. You have to like learn about the system and how it works and decide like how you're going to use that. And again, I think it'd make a really fantastic level editor because it is so simple and drag and drop and everything. But you know, also like things like the Unity splines, right? Like that draw spline tool, right? You're gonna have to recreate that because that doesn't just automatically work, right? In editor. And while I've created a spline, I'm gonna add a spline path component here. And I'm gonna go ahead and choose sand maybe. And
while you're doing this, is the Unity spline, is it better than all of the other third-party spline tools on the store? Like, is there a beneficial to use their one?
Well, I think the benefits of using them is more to do with the fact that it's universal. So if you have a car controller that will, you know, do AIs that follow a spline, they're either going to provide their own spline system, which isn't going to work with all the other spline systems, or they're going to end up on Unity's spline system, right? So there's a big advantage to kind of like, if we all move to Unity splines, then all of our stuff works together. And so I just felt like, you know, I didn't want to write another spline tool just to increase the incompatibility. So that's why I decided to backport it to 2021 instead. And because we just don't need like 80 different spline tools.
Yeah, as long as Unity doesn't deprecate their own.
Yeah, I mean, well, that is always the risk with Unity. I mean, you never quite know what they're going to do, but they haven't even released splines yet, so I'm assuming maybe they won't get rid of it so soon.
But we have been there before.
Yeah. I mean, you remember lightweight render pipeline was like, it was released for maybe a week before they decided to get rid of it and do URP. But, you know, that was kind of an excuse so they could say they had released it. But so, yeah.
Now your trees, like before, because I need to always interrupt you to your train of thought. Question in chat. Now, these trees that get, and just look at there. Look at that. It's like, these trees, boop. Okay, let's join the link again. Boom. Same link. Same link works. Let's do that again. I blame Sengoku for that. Join it again. Good job, Jaw. Hey, buddy. Okay, hang on. Teams.
I'm back.
You're back. There you go. Now, why is the Discord one on there? Discord Max. Why screens? Oh, you're not big. That's why.
What do you mean?
He tried to avoid the question. Yes. Hang on. I need to reorganize the screen size because I messed it up. The question was, are the trees able to use like tree objects, like not just the Unity tree, so you can have scripts on them and chop down the trees and all that stuff?
Everything right now goes through the Unity terrain system. So basically, if think about it this way, if you can do it in using the Unity standard terrain stuff, then it's exactly the same.
I can't remember who was it. Was it you trees or something? That there was the asset that it would spawn Unity trees, but then it would put objects on the position of where Unity spawns the trees for the colliders of the trees.
Well, the Unity system does support colliders on trees. It's more the so what do you call it?
No, but it was like when you hit the tree, when you hit that script
on
that one, then it would replace the Unity tree one with the object tree one.
Yeah, so like Vegetation Studio had stuff for that. So if you're rendering your trees with that, then it would work. Again, like I look at this as like my first priority was to create a system which just worked with standard Unity trains, right? And didn't do anything funky. And then I may add on like GPU rendering or something like that. But honestly, if people are happy with the solutions out there, then I don't need to write all that code, you know?
Don't reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, I mean that's why I didn't want to write my own spline system, because it's like, okay, if Unity's building splines, I'll just use theirs and not have to, manage and maintain all that code, because that sounds like a drag. So
Oh,
yeah,
Jaws says Mega World Instant Renderer can do this, switching back between and back as well.
sure, yeah. I I don't know. I'm not a big fan of like locking systems out of stuff and being like, okay, my stuff only works with my stuff. It's like if people want to use something else, that's totally fine. So yeah, I've just been setting up this spline path, which can, it can texture, it can modify the terrain for like a trench if you want to do a river. It can
And you've got the
have
fall off of that spline as well.
yeah, it's all. So you can see the modify height map here. If I turn that off, then it won't affect the height map or the splat map. I can turn them all on and off. The same thing for clearing trees. Like if I don't do that, then the trees will clear. And I can like set the widths on each of those. So if I was like 20, you get a nice wide path, right? That all the trees are away from.
So would I duplicate that then and make it wider if I wanted to put like pebbles on the outer side, but have a different one on the inner side?
There's other things too, like for instance, there's an add objects along spline, and this is where that advantage of using Unity's system comes in, because like this is just going to add a component here.
So I could add like telegraph poles across it.
Yeah.
But would that be on the outer? Can I make it on the outer side, and then like have them one side, and then others on the other side?
So yeah, if I go to, and again, this is just Unity's spline code. This isn't even my code, but
I have not touched their splines.
I think they're going to be good when they're all done. So I'm just going to grab example rock here, and
now while you're doing that, is there a chance that you're going to show us how this works with Microsplat, or do we not have time today?
Oh, I can. Yeah, I mean, I'm not under any time limit. So this is their like spline tool here, and I've just instantiated these rocks along here, and they have all kinds of controls for like distance. So I don't think I want them that often.
Or you can add multiple objects in the same, so you could have like different.
You can have variations, yeah,
oh, nice.
And then you can randomize like the rotation here, so now that they're all different, and then you can do things like, okay, I want some random scale on here, and so random.
I really need to play with their spline more. I didn't realize that it actually had
and
features.
Then I do like a position offset here, where I'm like, okay, let's move these, over to the edge of the spline here, and they have all kinds of alignment rules and stuff like that. So yeah, you can do all this kind of stuff with their spline system. They have a system for generating geometry along it, which is actually in their samples. I kind of wish it wasn't, but so if you want to make a river, it will generate the geometry for you for the river. And then I have a thing called trench in my splines here, which lets you, I'll exaggerate it. So now I've made a big trench, right?
Oh, nice.
Line. So if I was doing like a river and needed that, you can just do that. And the greatest thing about all this, right, is that it's completely non-destructive. I can come over here and like change the path, and it, my trees reappear. My texturing is fixed. Like nothing is permanent. Everything is adjustable.
See,
right?
that's the thing that blows my mind, because I was playing about with Road Creator last year before, and it was great because I made everything look exactly how I wanted, and then I slightly ballsed up my splines, and then would have to like try and undo, but then the undo messed up, and everything, my terrain was just messed up.
Here's an interesting one. This was a little bit of a thing to get going, but I'm going to add a copy paste stamp, and where did it add that? Why do I not see it? Did it not add it?
Did it add it as a child of the one that you pasted?
Oh, Yeah, it did. That's not right. I have to fix it. It's supposed to go not a child of the one that you're selected, but a child of the microverse. So I'll have to, that's a bug.
My job is complete.
All right. So here's a copy paste stamp. And what I can do is come over here and actually, before I copy, let me just, I'm going to size this thing to like 200, 200, 200. And let me go make something with the terrain tools, for instance, here that is unique. And I got to figure out, oh, great. Oh, yeah, okay, fine. We'll do it across terrains. So let's go here and we're going to paint some little, wait, what is this? Paint texture. No, I want razor lower heights. So we create this like wonderful little ridge that took us.
That's beautiful.
And then I'm going to switch to painting textures, and I'm going to paint some grass on it. Great. So I've spent hours on this, and I'm like, I don't want to lose it. If I just like start messing with Microsplat, it's going to blow all this away because it's not like in the Microsplat system or Microverse system. So what I can do is I've got this stamp around it, and I do create a copy object. And then what it'll do is it'll create a stamp out of this, and I can just call it the copy stamp. And now we've got a stamp of our terrain thing that we painted, and I can move it around.
Oh.
Right? So, you know, and I also have a mode here. If you've already got a terrain that's all you set up, this right now, it only works with heights and splats, but eventually I'll make it work with trees and detail as well. But if you already have a terrain all set up and you want this non-destructive workflow, you can basically capture the existing terrain as a copy paste stamp, and it'll set this up for you. There's basically, oh, you can't see my thing, can you? But there's basically an option for create microverse from existing terrain. And what this will do is take your existing terrain, create a copy paste stamp for it, and have it all lined up with the terrains, and then you can just start using the microverse stuff on top of it.
That is crazy.
And then, you know, once everything's in the microverse system, it's all non-destructive. So, you know, I can bring this over here and reposition it. And this could be a whole town with like the buildings and everything parented to this stamp, right? And then I could just move it and it would combine into this mountain, you know, however I want it to. And again, you can also do things like change the way that it blends with the background if you want. Have it subtract, whatever. So basically, this is a way that you can like work on an area, and then the designer's like, oh, we need that on a different mountain. And you're like, okay, capture, move, right?
Do you know, that in itself is an asset worth getting just in itself, just for that one functionality.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
So, you know, the idea was like, to do this non-destructive workflow, you have to have everything within this system, right? And so that's why I created this stamp, because it's like, hey, maybe I created my terrain and I spent all this time on it, and I'm not ready to like recreate it in this system because, you know, that's a lot to ask sometimes, but I really would like that nonlinear, you know, or non-destructive spline workflow, because I've been like fighting with this where my river goes forever, and it's just, you know, killing me to go back and fix it and repair it. Then you could, you know, work from that. And this will, again, I still have to add vegetation support to this, but I will. It's just a bit of refactoring. And I basically, this whole application I wrote in 1 month. And so I kind of had this goal. I was still doing a little bit of contracting, but I kind of had this goal to be like, okay, prove it works and can work, and then get it to a shippable like state for the modules it has, and then, you know, start supporting all the edge cases and stuff before I want to get it really solid and deal with all the little, you know, niggly bits and like edge cases and random stuff that's popped up since it got released. And then I can start adding new modules and new capabilities and stuff. And then the other big thing with this was the content browser. So any publisher out there who's got content packs, I would love for them to make content for this browser, and I can feature them like I featured, you know, all these stamps, right? Like they can have an ad in here where they, you know, people can be like, what is, you know, or here's a Canyon Hill that's just free, right? And then they can just, you know, take you right to the asset store to get your stuff. So that's kind of the benefit for publishers. But, you know, if you make a really nice pack of textures and, you know, vegetation and all this stuff, it takes a lot of time to go through and like okay, which ones go on my terrain layer? How do they work together? You know, how should I place my trees? So as a publisher of this stuff, if you include some of these like stamps essentially, right, for your forest or even just the whole biome, right? Like you could have a stamp which has all the texturing, height map, vegetation, grass, everything, and you know they can just plop it onto their terrain and get that. Or they can like mix and match like the way I've done it here. But then it becomes very, very fast for people to understand how to use your content, and then they can tweak it. They can bring in the biome as you imagined it, and then they can go tweak some textures or change some things. The other thing you'll notice about this is I haven't touched the terrain this entire time, right? Except paint, right? Yeah. So when you drag one of these stamps in that has texturing, it knows, okay, these are the textures. They get added to the terrain, and it knows to efficiently add them so that, if I don't use a texture on a terrain, it's not there, which is kind of the Unity way. And then with the Microsplat integration, it knows how to be like, okay, I'm going to make arrays of all these things and convert everything. And so you were asking about that earlier. I can just click on this top level thing. I say convert to Microsplat. It's going to pack all those textures, or the two that I've used. And now it's rendering with Microsplat. And so I can go to my texture array. All my data's in there, or 3, I guess it used, because we have the sand for the height map. And then it just has the config on here. It looks like I've set up some ones in testing, but go here, and then there's all my Microsplat stuff set up. And if I add new textures, basically like it won't work right away, and I have to push. There'll be a button here that shows up that says like you're out of sync. Hit this button. It also shows up when you add new textures into the system if you make like a new texture stamp or whatever, and that will get it to repack the arrays for you. So again, just tried to make everything really smooth and fast and work well. And
I can't get over the fact that you did this in such a short amount of time. So there's a couple of questions in chat. We'll get to in a second.
Yeah.
How big can I make my copy paste of an existing terrain? So I've got a 2K by 2K terrain that I've already made from an old project. I want to load it up. It's an old one. I made it like 5 years ago, and I update it to the latest version of Unity, and it still hasn't exploded, and it works. It looks nice. And I go, cool. All right, I'm gonna copy paste it to make it safe, and then I'm gonna.
The limit on texture resolution is 8K in Unity, but you can use multiple of them. So for instance, if I'm just going to sync this back, and I'm going to completely remove, I'm going to disable Microverse, and then I'm going to get rid of all of our stamps. So here we just have, and let me just get rid of that too. Here we just have a bunch of terrains, okay? Microverse is not in here or anything. It's all baked into the terrain at this point, right? And so let's say this is your terrain that you've spent forever on. It's 4 textures or 4 terrains, and it's all how you like it. You just go to create Microverse from existing terrain, and it warns you to back up just in case. And then remember that stuff doesn't work right now with vegetation. But you can see here it's still got our existing terrain. And if we look in Microverse, you'll see that it has 4 copy paste stamps.
Oh, it did it all by itself.
One for each terrain, right? Nice. And so now you can go and just start adding stuff or whatever you're going to do on your existing terrain.
Because I was going to be like, I don't want to manually place those copy paste stamps and be the pixel perfect, because I won't get it right.
It'll do it all for you. So the only thing is just that it doesn't handle the vegetation right now. That will when I get around to adding that feature.
Tomorrow.
Not tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm doing everything before I have to drive to Maryland and then fly to England. So it won't be tomorrow. But I do have a train ride down, and so I'm going to work on things then. There's also an audio system in here, by the way. And if we go to the demo here and we press play.
Am I going to be able to hear
I don't know if you'll be able to hear my audio is the question. But I can explain if not.
No, I can't hear.
Yeah, I can't either. So it may be because we're streaming or whatever. But
Do the voice, do the sounds from your mouth of what we should be expecting.
well, okay. So what I did on for the demo, and if you know have this, you can go ahead and uh, you know play it yourself. Is when you're on this spline path, there's music playing. Um, and when you get away from the path, it fades it out, and that's just using this background audio thing. Now, so you can attach sound to be in an area from a spline. You can do it just like you do with stamps. If we actually look here,
Oh, missing script. That's why it's not working.
that's why it's
That's why it's not working. I just and I just think, did I just get the answer to Sengoku asked earlier, what about adding some randomness to the spline width or tree clearance? Now you could add a noise.
So you can't add a noise to the location itself, but oh, I know why, because the Ambience module is not installed, so I need to install really quick. But what I do have right now is a way to add noise to the spline's texturing. And so you can see I have this like path that's kind of like grown over here.
Yeah.
And what I did was just add noise to it to like the weight of the texturing, and then basically told, oh, I didn't show this. So any of these stamps can also, the ones that come after texturing, they can filter by texture as well. So if we look here, you can see that grass 2 will not grow on sand, snow, or rock. And so you can basically like filter out things or filter in things based on textures. And so what I did was say, hey, don't put this stuff on this type, rather than using the clearance stuff, which is sort of big and smooth and whatever. And if we look at sorry, the path that I was just on, which is the path less traveled, you can see it just uses an FBM noise at a very high frequency on the splat map, so that it basically
just put sound randomly, yeah.
Right. So if I turn that off, you're going to see you get like, oh, also the splat width is basically nothing. But if I turn that back on, you can see it's like, oops, you can see how it's like affecting the texturing there. And then because I have things cleared based on that texturing, you can see as I like let it cut more of this path out, you can see the plants start growing there. So yeah, you can, there's a lot you can do with that. And again, I'm always open to requests on stuff. Sometimes I'll push back a little bit and be like, well, wait a minute, how can you do it this way? Because I like the idea that there's this very small UI surface that you can do a lot with, right? And so I'm trying to keep that, but like certainly, adding noise to more things is all totally possible. And what was I needed to add the ambient modules, and maybe we'll be able to hear it then.
Cool. While you do that, Dowie, !D environment, I put that in chat. Dowie, thank you for coming in, buddy. Hi, Jason. Was wondering if you ever experimented to use a vector displacement type stamp. Would be amazing to make a badger mountain or stamp a messy stamp on the side of a mountain cliff. Thank you.
Yeah, so vector displacements, if you don't know, are just basically you're storing 3 directions in a displacement map instead of 1, and then offsetting things. They have to be uncompressed, so that makes them kind of big in memory. The real problem with doing anything like that on terrain is that Unity's terrain system is not expecting that to happen, so your colliders won't match. And there's no way, like you could do it at a texture level and move the vertices, but like it wouldn't line up with anything else in the system. So like the plants, would grow in the wrong spots, et cetera, et cetera. So to do something where you're using vector displacement maps for terrain, which would be good for like overhangs, but not caves really, you'd need to use a lot of memory and you need to write your own terrain system. All doable. I mean, I've written terrain systems before. They're not that complex. But yeah, but I think...
or you just carve it out and replace it with an object.
Well, that's kind of the Unity way, and it's kind of what Digger automates, right? Like if you ever use Digger.
I was about
Okay,
to say
so
that's what they do, isn't it? Gildar, Spline 2021. If you go into the the Microverse Spline folder, he's got a zip file where he's backported the Spline package from 2022 to work in 2021. It's in the core PDF docs, which I never read, hence me being a noob.
let me see if I got this all installed correctly now. I didn't. Well, it doesn't have the area, which is weird.
Damn you! No reference exception.
Oh, it'll be in examples. Let me hook this back up really quick. Oh, nope, that's not it. Is it in sound effects? Birds.
Are you getting a null because it's not checking that ambient is empty?
Yeah, which I should probably do. Just not spew, but it is telling me that it's not empty, so it's it's doing
its job.
Yeah, it's doing its job, but whether that should be what it does or not is a whole other thing. So on one of the village paths, where is it? Village path 2, maybe? Yeah, ambient area. So let's see if this works now. Now that I've got the package installed.
Otherwise, you will have to make the sound effect with your mouth. Okay.
What the hell?
I can't hear anything, but I could.
No, I can't either.
I can see a few complaints though.
Yeah. This is Unity's.
You love coming on the stream, don't you?
What do you mean?
Because this would work. This would have been perfect beforehand.
From the Unity post-processing stack. I tried to get it going before this, and it's just a mess. Let me just remove it. Roland knows how to make it not complain, but that's what's throwing all the null refs. It's not my stuff.
Yeah, Nolan's like, you need to remove it and then re-add it. That's my. And have we crashed? No, we're back again. I do love that with the post-processing.
I mean, look at the aliasing on that sign right now in the demo, right? Like, it's terrible. So, like, you do need some anti-aliasing and stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know if it's going to play sounds over the stream is the
problem. Can you hear it, though?
No, I don't hear anything, which is weird. But anyway, let me just show you how this stuff works. So this ambient area object, again, range fall off, same thing. You can go global with it, whatever you want, and place these just like any other stamp in the system. And in this case, it has this ambient config, which is got some random sounds in it. And I bet you the clips are not. Oh no, they're there. So it's got 3 bird sounds. It's going to play them 60 meters away with a minimum distance of 20. So between 20 and 60 meters from the player. And it'll happen every 4 seconds with up to 4 seconds of variance. And the volume is random, and same with the pitch has a little variance too. And so that'll just play birds around us. Because right now I have it set to global, it'll be over the whole scene. But again, you can place these. It'll actually sum up the volumes as well. So if you place them with a bunch of overlapping volumes, it'll treat it as if it's one thing playing back birds or whatever you want. So you can kind of model your volume.
Were you needing a break from doing the main Microverse stuff, and you were like, you know what, I'm going to add audio?
No, what it was is I was getting ready to. Okay, so there's a couple stories here. First of all, during the pandemic, I'm friends with tons of musicians, and I was worried about them all being out of work. So I decided I would write an interactive music and audio system, and whipped it up. And then it turned out that my friend Fred, he works for YouTube Music, had hired almost all of them to produce music for YouTube. So they all had jobs. And so plus doing stuff with like 12 different musicians is like herding cats. And so I had some demos going with a couple of them, but it was just kind of like, okay, this is not worth it. Plus, like trying to do all the revenue cuts and everything, it was going to be a project. But I was doing it basically so that they'd not starve to death. And so I just shelved it because they all had jobs. And then when I was doing Microverse, this does not have the interactive music system in it right now. I may add that at some point, but I was like, well, it does really need sound. And I was kind of like, it could just, again, it took me like a couple hours to port the ambient system over. And I also, it has a background sound system, which you can just use for like playing, a looping stream, right, of audio. And so I just ported that over and was like, this way, anybody who buys the core collection will have this piece of it, rather than it being an add-on because I do sell all the modules individually, like kind of I do with all my stuff. But I kind of wanted the sound to be in there because it's one of those things that people forget about, and then their game is not nearly as good, right? So I felt like
silence of an MMO made in their bedroom.
I really what?
The eerie silence of an MMO.
Exactly. So the idea was like, let me just get this thing in there as a wedge so that everybody has this module and that they have a system for sound. Because, I've spent years in the industry, and as a musician, you're kind of like constantly watching these companies shortchange audio, and it really does affect the way they think things look. It's a big part of making a game. So I just wanted it to ship with the core collection, and so I made a module real quick and stuck it in there so that I could have that space carved out. And yeah, you can attach these ambient configs to different things. So this is one that just has a background loop. It doesn't have any random sounds. And maybe I can play it through here.
Oh, I can hear that.
So that's my friend playing as a Zhang. He's a guy I did Asheron's Call with, the music system for Asheron's Call 2, and he's got like the most insane home studio, and he's a VP at DraftKings now. But yeah, so that will appear when you're on the path, and as you move away from the path, it sort of fades out. And so you can, with this, you can actually create a pretty cool little area-based music system. But I do have a real adaptive music system that's kind of sitting in the corner that I might throw in here at some point, because I would rather almost give away audio stuff to make sure people do it. You know what I mean?
Please make your games better. There is no excuse anymore.
And again, if there's any publisher of audio stuff listening, you can make a prefab for the content browser for like some setting of like really cool background.
You know that you say you're really bad at marketing, right?
Yeah.
You're in my Discord, yeah.
Yeah.
And you know that my Discord has the secret asset publisher section.
Okay. Maybe.
Which is full of music.
I love the publisher Discord. The problem isn't letting people know. The problem is getting them to realize the benefit to their product. That like, I've set this up so like if there was a sound pack in here of like ambient soundscapes of like different forest types and things like that. Like I think my users would just be like, let me get that one because it's already set up. And
exactly. There you go.
You know what I mean? Same thing for like particle effects or like, all these like, because there's so much content on the store, but it takes a long time to go through it and learn how to use it. And with this, you kind of don't. You just go, you know what? I like the way this sounds. Stick it in that area. Right?
So am I now going to be shilling for you in the same way I do for Dowie? Whenever anyone's making art assets and they're like, well, I don't know how HDRP, I don't know about making my own shaders. I'm like, why don't you just go to Dowie and get his buy his pack, and then you can actually redistribute his core HDRP or URP shaders in your asset if you don't want to do your own HDRP skin shaders or cloth shaders and things like that. And the people go, oh, I didn't know about that. I didn't realize I could just, if I own his pack. So now I'll be doing the same. Hey, do you want to get your music or your art in integrated into Microverse?
Yeah. No, I mean, I really hope that, because it provides such a better workflow for people. Like, I've spent years of my life curating content for games. Like at Turbine, we bought around $10,000 worth of samples, and we had an intern just go through, sort them, cut them up. It took them like a year, because it was so many sample libraries. But then we could move quick with it. But then even with that, you're still going through and being like, which one was the good one for this? So like
you've just described near enough every member of my Discord and what they've currently got in their Unity asset library. They've got $10,000 worth of assets that they're trying to get through.
But being able to just like this texturing is the Alpine texturing that's on here, right? You can just drag it on the scene, and then hey, that's what you get. And this over here, this little biome I didn't show off. This is just a corner of this that's set up for this type of a look. And so I just dragged it in the area, and this spline controls where it appears. So if I go down here in the pine forest and I grab the spline here and I move this path, then that's where it appears, right? So like the content flow just becomes, for making levels, what do you want? Oh, you want a pine forest? You want a swamp? Okay, great. Throw it down, put it where you want it, shape it how you want it, and you're done, right? And so if I can get all those good nature manufacturer, the people that provide these really nice sets of content to provide these, I'll happily advertise, because it makes the workflow really easy. It increases their sales, and everybody has a better experience and spends less time futzing with their content and more time using it. So that's kind of the goal with the browser.
Dawa, you need to ping Alex and show Alex this. Let Alex know so he can get his nature packs into this.
Yeah. No, contact me. I mean, I've sent some mail to a couple publishers. I just don't really get much back. Or they're like, oh, that's cool, and then they're like, well, I'll see where this goes. But I think like this is in terms of speed of work and having it be non-destructive till you ship your game, like that's such a game changer for this editing. And so I think this is going to sell very well. And I think the content which gets embedded in this first is going to see an uptick from that, like a uptick that's worth the time. Because a lot of times, integrating with assets can also like mean like, well, now something broke and whose fault is it? Like there's a lot of downsides to doing integrations for publishers. But for users, I think this is a big win, and I think it will actually be a big win for publishers as well. So yeah, and I'm not trying to charge for anything stupid like that. I want to have the best system I can, and I think, I'm not like, it's funny. I was an art director for a while and a lead artist on a project, but I'm not a good artist. Like I can use math and hack things pretty well, but having really, like, these are all assets that are Unity's basically, yeah, but having all those good artists have their stuff in here would really, like, just everybody who uses it will have a better experience. And
also, Goku, is it possible to create a biome with the spline tool? For example, an oasis in a desert?
Yeah, you just carve out the area you want into whatever shape you want, just like I did with the over here. I constrained the forest with the spline. Right? You can constrain your texturing with it, however you want to do it. For instance, over here, let's find it, desert. This is this little deserty area here is just some texture stamps that I threw down, and this is before I had splines working, so I used a radial fall off and then just basically like nonlinear scaled it to do it. But it however you want to do it. You can do it with splines, you can do it with, and you can now have like multiple splines in there, so you can make like a, multiple looped closed areas, and they'll all just be one texture stamp in the system, or one, area stamp or whatever. So yeah, like fundamentally, once you realize like everything is a stamp, everything has fall off, everything has filters, right? And all those filters, like, and you understand how noise works on any of those things, then like it's all just the same stuff, and you can do anything with that. Let me
I love that everything can be a prefab as well. Oh, and Barak, see, everyone's just reading my mind. Barak says, "Can you show us how to make an object stamp and then add it to the browser for reuse?"
Yeah. So the browser is really like heavily under construction in my mind because it's really going to be like, well, what's the need and all this stuff. Right now, the process was designed for other publishers to do this with content collections, but I'm totally open to the idea of like a right-click menu that just says like add to my collection kind of thing. And I'm also
nice.
totally open to the idea of having other categories up here as needed. But the way it works right now is that if we look in the actual main Microverse package data here, there's basically these ads, which are just a little scriptable object that says like, hey, okay, here's author name, the pack name, and an ID for it, which is just a unique ID that we check against. And then a little preview image and a download path, which just takes you to the asset store to potentially purchase the path. And then when you install it, what happens is if we look in Roland Terrain examples, stamps, whatever it is. Oh, he has a Microverse folder, and then he has stamped examples. Okay. And so this just says, so again, it's a scriptable object. You can create it from the right-click menu. But basically what it says is, okay, I'm a collection of height stamps. Here's my author. Here's the name that I should show. Here's that ID again, which we're just using the URL for because that's fine. I can assign a preview gradient for height stamps, which are, so basically you notice how they're all red in here. That's the actual height data, but in here they're showing this gradient. So you can basically like have these gradients if you want to be like desert stamps, and they're all like deserty colors or whatever, and it'll texture the preview that way. And then each of the content blocks can either have, in the case of a height system here, it will either use a stamp, like that's the minimum you need, but if you want, you can provide a prefab game object. So when you drag this out, if you had a whole bunch of settings or it was like a collection of stamps, right, instead of just a regular stamp, then you could just use the prefab, and then it'll instantiate the prefab instead of just in making a stamp. And you can give it a full preview image or preview asset, and then the gradient for showing up in here if you want to, if you don't use the prefab. And it's the same for all of these. Basically, there's height, texture, vegetation, objects, audio. So that's how they get packaged up. I think like in the future, I don't know whether I would have like a user group that always appears in each of these categories, and then you can like make a prefab and say right click, add prefab to user group or whatever we want to call it. And then it would just show up in here, right? All set up for you. So there's a lot that can be done with this system. And again, much like the Ambience system, it's like I just wanted to get something in to prove the concept and really like start the process of talking to publishers, talking to users about like, well, what do you want from a content browser? Because before it didn't have this, and you can do it all by, you go to your stamp, you drag in, you find your height map in the asset tree or whatever and drag it in here, and that all works. It's just it's slow, right? And we all know that workflow because we all use it every day. So yeah, really the thing here was how do we elevate the workflow to be really, really fast so that so that Roland can make 800 demos a year instead of 100
a week.
Yeah, he was kind of my like prototype user for this because he kind of kicked it off, and I was like, all right, I'll build this thing and you're going to test it.
He's a prototype user because when you did the last updates for Microsplat as well, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna play about, I'm gonna put like elephants running around snow, and then I go and see, oh, Roland, you've already done it. Cool. How did you do that?
Yeah. So and then I had a couple other people who came in for the beta who like, it's tricky testing software as a solo developer in the asset store is actually really it's a hard problem because you can write automation and things and spend a bunch of time doing that. You can, you know, you could hire a QA team to test your stuff, but then you're like doubling your risk, right? Because now instead of me spending a month of my time, it's now me spending a month of my time and paying somebody for 2 people to work for a month, right? And you can rely on users, but then you're really relying on the gift of others. And so luckily the people that I invited in, they I think there were 1 or 2 that really didn't do anything, but the couple that did, really, I think they did a good job. But as soon as you release something into the asset store, it's panic room time. You know what I mean? I just, I developed most of it in 2022, and I have a crash bug in 2021 with details right now, and it's a Unity bug, and I haven't found a way around it. But it just didn't come in testing because there's nobody doing proper regression testing who's like, oh, you changed this thing, did it break something else? And so I yearn for that type of QA team again, but it's just not possible. So now, I try to get things out when they're going to be a big boost in productivity, and then listen to the feedback and try to figure out what to do with it, and sort of scramble at launch date to fix up all the bugs. So
I can't believe how quickly you made this as well. It is insane.
I'm very, very fast. I mean, I'm always very fast, and I write highly performant code of mostly high quality, right? It's we all have our things that we miss, but I do it very, very fast, and it's because a lot of my career has been working for these companies where it's okay, I have 2 days until I have to ask, if this is going to take more than 2 days, I need to ask for permission, right? So I've got to deliver something really fast, or I'm on a prototyping team. I did a ton of prototyping at Harmonix. And so you're just trying to get stuff up and get results. And because of that, if I have a pretty good vision of what I'm going to do, it comes out really quick. And then it's a question of okay, now how do I button up all the loose ends and make sure this thing is architected right and it's scalable and buildable? And so the first week and a half of this was basically just proving that height maps, splat maps, trees, and details could all be real time. And then once I did that, the other 2 weeks was basically okay, what's the right architecture, and what's the right feature set? And then, while I'm waiting for the asset store to release, I'm doing all the polish stuff, because you got to get it in line. And the weird thing about the asset store is you get in line to release, and you can push updates all you want until they review it. But the second they review it and approve it, you can't push updates. Otherwise it goes back to the beginning of the 3-week line.
Oh, wow.
So you have to ship everything's going live, and it's only fixes up until that date. You know what I mean? Otherwise you risk so it's kind of this crazy system they have that I think doesn't make a lot of sense, but it is what it is. So
if it got approved, but you need to roll out a hotfix, you got to go, hey everyone, don't worry.
You have to ship the first one,
yep,
and then roll out a hotfix, which will take a couple days. So you got to get your hotfixes in while it's waiting for review, and they have a counter now, but you still kind of never know when it's going to happen. So on Sunday nights, right now, I have a version in waiting for review, which is going to fix a bunch of bugs, and adds the colored browser stuff for the height stamps and some niceties and stuff like that. And it's just waiting because I think tomorrow morning they'll probably approve it. So there's a lot of that kind of chicken or egg stuff with the asset store. But what I do for my own customers is you can come into my Discord. There's a bot that'll give you GitHub access, so you can get direct access. You get full history of every change. You can roll back to whatever change you want, look through the changes, et cetera. It's using GitHub is so much better than using the asset store for actual tool distribution and stuff. So I recommend people come in to Discord, register with the bot, and get access to that. And then the other thing you can do is you can set it up where you sync to those, like you have them all somewhere on disk, and then all your projects reference them. So when you take an update, it's like they all get updated, and that saves a lot of time too.
Here, boom, is a link to your Discord in the chat. There you go. It's almost as though that was rehearsed. Now, talking about working with other publishers, and we've spoken about Roland a lot today, and you'll be playing with his stamps, is actually giving me some presents to give away as well.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So I've got some Roland stamps. If you already have got a tool, but you could use stamp it tools with stamping onto the Unity terrain, and even without this. So if you're using Microverse, or you're not using Gaia, you're not using World Creator, you're just using Unity, you can still use these stamps from Stampit. All right. So, oh my gosh, he's giving me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 gifts to give away.
That's cool.
That is crazy. And is it still on the sale if I click on Microverse? You are still on 30% new release sale, which is ending soon, by the way.
That's ending like tonight or something.
That is ending tonight.
Yeah.
All right. So rather than doing lots of individual raffles, okay, I'm going to announce 10 winners. So, because that would take like 10 hours to do this. Amazing Roland Stampit assets. There you go. Okay, so let's open up the raffle, !raffle in chat. So stick your names in, !raffle in the chat to join the raffle. And if we do an !Roland in chat as well, he's so famous, Jace, that he's got a command with just his name in there. And to be fair, so have you.
In your thing?
In my Twitch chat.
Oh.
But actually, I think if you just do Jason, yep, if you do Jason, you come up. Which is embarrassing because I interviewed Jason Wyman just before my back went in, so that there's more than one Jason around.
I watched that, and he was what was the thing he was saying? You were saying about his streams, about them being very compact and yours being very random. The other thing I noticed is that your streams, you're never on the camera.
Well, the thing is, my camera was working, then I gave it to my wife so she could do the homeschooling with the kids. And then when I got it back and I set up my, the animated face to work again with it, the calibration was all messed up. Would no longer sync on my face right. And another amazing artist, Stella, on the asset store, she made me a 3D version of my face, like a Disney and 3D model version of my face.
Okay.
And I've been trying to get that to work now with FaceRig, so that I could use her, because it's far more emotive than the 2D one that I made.
No, I meant your actual face.
Oh no, of course not. No, why would anyone want my actual face? It's horrendous.
I don't know. It's like people like to see people.
No, not my face. No, dear God. That's why I've got the cartoon face. And my original one, I was bald, right? So the first, if you watch my original videos, my cartoon head was bald with the sides hair like a bit like you, but not you've still got some on top. Imagine you've got nothing on top and you've only got the side, right? So that's how the cartoon was, right? And my wife told me that I wasn't allowed to have that, and that I'd have to put hair on. She goes, "You're not bald in real life," and I'm like, "So?" She goes, "So you're not allowed to do that?" I was like,
"Right,
okay."
But you can be whoever you want to be on the internet.
That's the thing, because I was like, it makes me look more intelligent. Hence, you, as you look in real life, is how I wanted to look. So there you go. People wanting a face reveal. If you went to see me at TwitchCon, if you went to Twitch London, I've been there. Okay, where I wear a plastic. Oh, I can hear the noises.
Yeah, it's working.
It's working. So yeah, I have a mask, a physical paper mache mask of my cartoon face that I wear when I'm out and about at places, Jace.
Okay.
But I have the bottom cut out so that my real moustache is hanging out, and people
Okay.
grab it thinking it's a fake moustache, but it's a real curly moustache. So yeah. I'm talking about back injuries and how you injured yourself turning the key in your car.
Yeah.
I was talking to Jason Weinman on Discord, and I said, "Oh yeah, I got back injury and recovering," and he said that he had a back injury, and it just from getting up out of his chair, he slipped getting out of his in his chair at the desk, just slipped in the. And I was like, we really need to make up stories for how we hurt ourselves to make ourselves sound far more impressive than they really are. Right.
When you were fighting off the hordes of zombies.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Hack T Wister, why are doing this? Why not? Why not, buddy? We should. All right, so let me open up the browser now to show people what they could be winning. All right, the raffle's come to an end, so he's going to start announcing. So if I help us improve the asset store, give us feedback. No. So over here, you can see all of these lots of stamps, lots of wonderful stamps. Oh, that's you. Shall I let you take that?
No, it's spam.
Spams. A streamer fell during a competition at this recent TwitchCon and broke her back in multiple places. Oh my god. Where did she fall from high up or just fall from standing? Or rather she jumped into a foam pit. Oh, okay. No, yeah, that's why I never do anything like that. Okay. So
it wasn't foam.
Yeah, the foam is not going to protect you from anything. All right. So the first one that we're going to give away is Alien Worlds. Where's Alien Worlds? It's here somewhere. You got too many stamps, Roland. Too many. All right, Control F.
Each one of those is a bottle of wine.
Alien stamps. There we go. Normally $15, but don't worry, you're getting it. So the winner of Aliens is Gilda. All right, let me. When are we going to write this? I'm going to write this in the Discord because I've got a channel in my Discord for announcing winners. Winners, not Jam Team winners. Where is it? Where is it? Raffle winners. Fresh me rate this. Okay, so Gildar has won Alien Worlds. Okay, well done. Nice one. The next one is Canyons. And I'm so glad I'm not sharing my Discord screen again by accident because I did that earlier when we were chatting. And if I do that now, everyone's going to see the raffle keys like I've done many times. I've done that before on my screen when I'm sharing my Discord screen and I accidentally show the keys.
Raffle keys, yeah.
I think I've done about 50 times.
Which screen are you sharing right now?
I'm sharing my the browser showing showing these things. So Nibbles has just won Canyons. Okay. So do you know I'm going to write these down on a piece of paper. Far easier than using technology.
I do have something to show real quick.
Oh, show. Yeah. Okay. Let me go back to big chat. There you go. Okay.
So let's say you've been working on this this world for a while and you're trying to support low and mobile and high end or whatever. You can go in here and just change the resolution to whatever you want it to be, and it will just regenerate at that resolution because, again, it can rebuild the world from scratch every time.
That's really cool because I need that for my taxi game because
Yeah.
Brilliant.
If this is kind of a thing you'd do at the end where you're like,
Yeah.
look, we need to lower the resolution of the train on this platform, so we're going to generate a different asset bundle for it or whatever. But also if you're, building like a really huge world and it's for whatever reason just not fast while you're working, you could lower it down, do all your work, and then take it back up.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you for showing me that. I appreciate that. Okay, next we've got deserts and dunes, baroque dub, baroque, deserts and dunes, islands was won by author Chris. This is wonderful. Yay, says author Chris. Ford Time Lord has won Meadows. Ford Time Lord. Now remember to hit me up on the Discord, otherwise I'm never going to find you. Okay? So you've won Meadows. Pride Rocks. Sanyo's won Pride Rocks. Sanyo. Pride Rocks. Don't be too proud. Take your pointings. Rugged Rocks. Alona Wolf. I always thought Alona Wolf was one of those rugged individuals. Rugged. Around the rugged rock, the rugged rascal ran. Now, I can't say my R's without making them W's, so that was really hard for me. Rugged sediment rocks is Stella. Stella. Rugged sediment. It's not the words I think of when I think of you, Stella, but there you go. Seaside cliffs, Dowie. Seaside. And volcanoes was won by Google. Google, hit me up on the Discord. FB, you have won volcanoes. Congratulations. Now, if you are trying to pick up Jason Brew's Microverse, it is the last day of the sale to get the big one. But you don't need just to get the big one, do you, Jace? Because you've got, that's the core. That's the core.
Yeah. So, what's funny? No one has not purchased the collection yet.
Really? No. So
Yeah.
No one's gone and bought
Every single person has been like, yeah, I need all of it. And I think I'm wondering whether I should have even broken up. But, somebody pointed out when we were doing beta and I was trying to figure out how to break stuff up. And they're like, well, what if they want to do vegetation with Vegetation Studios like tools? And I'm like, all right. So, I separated it out. But so far, everybody's just bought the whole collection. So
do people know that they don't need to?
I mean, I guess so. It'd be kind of clear about it being a collection. But I think they just want all the features, 'cause like if you're using this thing and you don't want spline-based tools in areas, like seems like you would always want that. And vegetation is really the one that I think like, you can do a lot without splines. You still have a really good editor, and but I think it's just like the combination is really good. So, but
so what do you get for the $60 one?
Just the core one, you get heights and texturing. So you get all the fall off and noise, and you can build, do the height stamps and texturing stamps and stuff. You don't have like vegetation population stuff. So the idea there was like, hey, I might just want to build height maps and it's, more like Atlas or something. And I get, textured all, and then I take it into Vegetation Studio and do all the vegetation rendering in that, and population, because maybe you like their tool set or maybe you just know it really well. So that was kind of the thought of breaking it up. But so far, everybody's just done the whole thing.
Chat saying, basically, Roland decided to make all of us winners. Thanks, Roland. Exactly. Thank you, Roland. You are a beautiful badger.
Well, I mean, to be fair, this example set that he has is a really nice collection of a stamp from like a bunch of his different packs. Like he has like 3 stamps from each pack in here, or from his major packs or something. So, even that you could build a really amazing and massive world from, and it would be easy.
And he's also got a new asset out called Animation Preview, if you knew about that, an Animation Preview Pro. And I'm actually going to do a video because there's some wonderful animations I'm going to play about with. And I was like, you know what? This would work really well in that review that I'm doing of the animations to make it easier for me to review the animations. So I managed to mooch a copy of Animation Preview Pro of Roland. So I'll be using that in my next video that I'll be putting on YouTube this week. So there you go. All right, back into the big screen with what you're playing about. Why you're making a nipple on your
a double?
Why are you making a pulsating nipple?
I'm just moving a height stamp.
No, I know what you're up to.
Playing with these Roland's stamps here.
So if somebody bought your $60 core, can they upgrade to the full one?
Yeah, they just buy the other modules. It's like Microsplat is, because.
But if they've got the 61, how much difference is it to get? Like, could they upgrade to the full bundle one cheaper than getting the individual modules?
I don't have that set up right now. It's possible to do nowadays in the asset store, but I haven't set that up. So I might.
You should do that. You need to do that.
Yeah. But there was also the other thought of uploading everything multiple times is kind of a pain. Like maybe I should just get rid of the individual models if everyone is going to buy the collection. I'll probably keep them because I can imagine a world where 2 years from now there's a whole bunch of different modules on the store for stuff, and people want to arrange their own collection of things. But I called it the core collection because I think this is like the core functionality that makes it a really powerful world editor,
I was gonna say, can I blag a key for the core one?
Sure.
And give a raffle out, because then they could upgrade to the other one.
Why don't I just give you the collection to give out, because I don't know. I'd rather people have the full experience. If we're gonna do prizes, we might as well make it good.
Sure. Are we? I wasn't trying to mooch one out of you, but shall we? You're amazing. Look at that.
Yeah, sure. You're looking at my screen now,
I am
right?
looking at your screen. So do not generate a key now.
Right.
Do that afterwards.
Okay, I'll send it to you afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I break things. That's why people aren't allowed nice things. All right, so we got a copy of the Microverse collection to give out. And if you haven't won it, don't worry, you can still buy it at 30% discount, but you got to be quick because that discount's ending soon. Like today, like pretty quick. Like any moment that discount could end. Exclamation mark raffle in chat. Dun dun dun. And if you have already purchased, then you can always buy it again and give it as a gift for someone. Yeah, for Christmas. So there you go. It's not Halloween yet, Nibble Nort. You're like one of those people that goes around doing Christmas decorations in September, aren't you? Hope it's me. So I'm really feeling, Jace, that this is so simple that even I could use it.
That's the idea. I mean, I've seen a lot of tools for doing terrain stuff over the years, and it's very easy to get caught up in the power of something. But if it's, to me, production tools and I make this mistake too as a tool creator, right? Like I love building all the features in, and but workflow being fast is a pretty big one. So that's kind of what I was focused on this, and not totally overloading it with every possibility, but rather making this idea of hey, I can just pair this occlusion stamp with this other stamp, and then it'll do the thing I want. One of the examples was the house example, right? That was one of the major things that Roland had been asking me to do for 2 years, and so yeah, just trying to keep that UI service small and repeating. So you're like, oh, okay, I know how filters work. I know how fall off works, and then I just play with the data.
And this, because it's all shady shenanigans and other magic witchcraft that you always do, this will work with HDRP, built-in URP.
Yep. Even the demo does. I didn't write the best shaders for the vegetation. Like, this is just basically like a lit shader on everything. It's not, doesn't do wind or anything. So you're probably still looking for like a shader package. I may write one eventually for, vegetation, but like I kind of would need to sit and decide, okay, do I have enough interesting stuff to add that it's, worth introducing another set of them? Or does it, help in some way, right? Because I'm not really interested in just doing things to have on the store and make money. I like to do things that are novel and unique in some way. And so if it doesn't have an angle that really matters, I'm not going to tackle it. So,
what are we saying in chat? Production and workflow tools save so much time, like splitting off assembly files for faster compile, etc. Someone of the 26 people here is going to go. We've already read that. And I love earlier that who was it? Was it Google that said that Jason has taught them how to curse Unity in so many new and wonderful ways? And I think it was just earlier today you were bemoaning the shader shenanigans to someone on Twitter, weren't you?
I mean, it was just a shot in the back of anybody who writes shaders. Yeah, it was not appreciated. So
it's how big is the shader community now? There must be thousands of people working on this amazing framework.
Well, on the plus side, right? Like by adding a shader graph, they opened it up to a large audience of artists. But by not having a proper abstraction, what they did is make it very hard for anyone doing anything that's too complex for a shader graph or shouldn't be done in a shader graph. Like shader graphs are really wonderful when you're like, I've got this unique piece of art and it really needs this very specific thing written for it. And an artist can go in there and like do exactly what they want, right? They're not great at writing systematic shaders that need to perform well and and work in all cases and things like that. It becomes a terrible mess. So they traded audiences basically, and if you were in the systems audience, you were not happy. So.
Well, Greed Team says, Jason, thanks for all your hard work. I've been using Microsplat for a long time now, and now using it in HDRP.
Yeah. It's interesting because they're finally doing what they're calling block shaders, which are going to be some kind of abstraction. I really haven't seen anything, an example or anything. They haven't released anything. They're supposedly going to soon. But again, I've been hearing about docs that were, I was promised docs like 2.5 years ago. Apparently they're copying some of the ideas from better shaders, which I think is actually great because being able to modularize shaders and reuse chunks of code will be a big win.
Didn't you go to them with like loads of advice originally and they kind of went, yeah, we're not listening to you?
Well, originally I worked for a company and we would always meet with them at GDC or wherever, and this is like 2017 or something. And they pitched, it was kind of a weird meeting because they basically had the guy who was doing asset bundles and then the people doing SRP in the same room. And so I was being pitched asset bundles at the same time as SRPs, right? And my instant reaction when they pitched SRPs, I was like, what are you going to do about shaders? Because as soon as you start talking about like n number of lighting models where n can be any large number, you're talking about millions of combinations of shaders, which we have the URP problem now of too many variants. And you're also talking about like, and I have to maintain all these lighting pipelines. And I'm like, you're really going to need a proper abstraction between these render pipelines. And they basically went, well, we'll figure that out later kind of thing. And and said something about having a shader graph or something. And I was just like, that's going to be a disaster. And, I left it at that. And then 2 years later, when they actually like released them, the mess began. And so it was unfortunate. I mean, I get how these things happen, especially like, I think they did some real fundamental mistakes in the beginning, like having the teams not be combined.
Yeah, that shocked me. They weren't even speaking to each other to know what they were doing.
Yeah. Well, this is why like setting the background color of a camera works differently in each pipeline. It's not even like a big feature, right? Like it's like this minuscule feature. I want to set a color, and like that's different between the pipelines, right? Let alone like all the shader stuff. And now they have this problem where they implement a feature people want in HDRP, and then they have to go re-implement it in URP. And it's, like there are valid arguments to be made for having separate pipelines for like high end and low end, but it's a gradient, right? It's not a very fixed thing where you're like, people are like, is this optimized for mobile? And you're like, well, what does that mean? Because I have mobile devices that are just as powerful as my laptop, and I have mobile devices which are like Atari 2600s, right? And so there's this huge gradient of devices, and you need to run on them. And really what separates them is, do I have compute shaders or not? Things like this, like major level things. And so they made these two separate pipelines, but the overlap in what they're running on is enormous, right? Like people want, like they just added the water system for HDRP. They want, the sky system for HDRP. There's no reason that code can't run on both platforms, other than the fact that they're so different for no reason that they can't really think across platforms.
Yeah,
and they've also
what's this rumor that they're going to drop URP and just have HDRP able
No.
to work on mobiles?
No, what they're going to, HDRP has fundamental limitations in that it needs compute. And compute is starting to become available on mobile, but not at the power level and the same dynamic sort of range as like what's fast on a RTX card versus what's going to be fast and compute on mobile are going to be different, right? So I don't think that's what's going to happen. They're going to try to write the abstraction layer they should have written in the beginning with block shaders, and they're going to try to pull those pipelines closer together so that there is less theoretical work in moving between them. And they're going to try to make them so they can coexist in one project, which is going to break a bunch of things for me. Like, right now I sort of like, I'm like, which type of project you're in? And then I like figure out what shaders to compile and things like that. And
that's why everyone is doing anything in Unity at this moment. That's how they work. Are you in HDRP? Are you in URP? Are you in built-in? Therefore, this is the world in which you're going to live in.
Right. So they're going to change that though, so that all the worlds live together, which is going to mean rewriting a bunch of stuff to support that. And then they're going to make it so that, you can have a material that like works in both. And but again, this is all the stuff they should have figured out first. And now what's going to happen is that they'll pull lots and lots of it together, but there'll always be these loose ends. There'll always be these little things that don't quite cross the boundary right. Like they're never going to finish this because they've got, two pipelines that are headed in different directions instead of having a really solid abstraction layer and then just the differences, right? Like you could have built URP and HDRP as like just like deferred and non-deferred rendering is in built-in, right? Or now in URP. It's not that fundamentally different through the whole pipeline. There's like certain aspects of like, okay, I'm going to do lighting this way. Most of it's really about lighting, or I'm going to cull, stuff in a compute shader as opposed to in the CPU. But again, there's like these sort of branching points, right, in the hardware that are really what you're trying to abstract away, not in the data. Right, and they basically put all the pain and all of the branching points of having to make these choices into the data instead of having an abstraction layer. So that's why it's like, you move from one pipeline to another. It's, weeks of work because they didn't think about the data being interoperable at all. And I mean, they they did in some parts, right? Like they share a texture sampling library, which is actually a pretty nice abstraction for texture sampling across platforms, and some low-level stuff, but not nearly enough. And they're gonna stick to their guns and pay a massive, massive tax on it for the next until these pipelines are gone, basically.
Well, you got to double down on your mistakes. You can't.
Right, you can't just admit you made a mistake.
No. You have to double down.
I mean, if I was in their position like 2 years ago, right? If I was in the position 4 years ago, I'd have been like, okay, this is a mistake. Let's like figure out what to do about it, build the abstraction layer, stop what we're doing, and then kind of roll off the advertising that they were doing for it. If I was in their position 2 years ago, it becomes a little harder to justify that because you have like games in production and things like that, right? And so the further along they go, the harder it is for them to like undo certain things, right? And at this point now, it's really like the only path forward is to make the best of it, because they're not going to just cancel them both and like start over. And there's actually a lot of good code in HDRP and URP. Like URP is a very cleaned up version of built-in render pipeline. People are pissed about like losing grab pass and stuff, but like those aren't the things that, I mean, I kind of agree with them on grab pass. Like, it totally screws up performance in a major way, and hooking that in would have been hard. But I also appreciate that like there are some things you can do with that are now really easy and don't require you to go write a custom render pipeline because you had it, so there's this trade-off there, and they've made, it's not so clear. Like they haven't made every choice wrong and they haven't made every choice right, but I think like there's it's really hard to turn a big ship fast, and because they're a 5,000 person company, like to me it feels like they can't even admit that something's a problem fast, right? Like they kind of pretended like everything was fine with SRP until just last year.
You got to be careful of share price though. If you admit there's a problem or that you made a mistake,
I don't buy that. I don't think that people investing in Unity give a shit about the render pipelines. I think it's more damaging to have all your users yelling at you and they're like, why is your community so upset? I think it's much better to be like, yeah, we're going to, reevaluate this tech choice, or like maybe this will work out better. What do you guys think? It's like, I think you should just be honest with people. It's not shameful to make a mistake. It's not, and the thing that's been frustrating for me personally is the sort of, and this is not from the individual people, they'll tell you it's like, oh, it's a clusterfuck, it's really, oh shit. You'll bleep that out. It wasn't PC before like this, was it? Because I cuss a lot.
I know. Really... The rules have always been there, Jace. You just never followed them.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure. Try, but Anyway, I think when you get a large company, it's very hard for a company to not just be a wall of sort of like resistance. And it was such a, I mean, they literally took my business and split it into three and said you can have a third unless you do 2 years of work. You know what I mean? And so for me, it was like I was very upset with them not doing these things. And I've made myself very known and started, the whole pink ball thing on the forum that you see all the time. That was me. I started SRP.
I know that was you because I think I still have my icon as the pink ball. I am a pink ball supporter.
Because they would not admit that there was anything wrong. I mean, I had Unity employees being like, oh, but you're, it's just you. Like nobody else is like working across pipelines, like they don't need this. It's just you, and I'm like, it is not. And it's going to become an increasing problem. And because they just kind of blew me off, like, I'm just going to get louder. You know what I mean? And even last year or so, it was, I had a meeting with Natasha where she just fed me a bunch of, what I can't say on the air. and then, promised all these things that she delivered none of. And, it's like, oh, you can just contact us anytime. No, she never responded to anything. And it's like, I don't want to sit and be lied to. Like, I'm not going to calm down because you're lying to me, like right to my face. You know what I mean? So they bumbled this thing in terms of relationship. And, if my name is now mud at Unity, I really don't care because they're wrong and they screwed up and they wouldn't take accountability for it. And they, collectively acted like, they could do no wrong. And it's like, that is not a proper attitude for anyone to have. We all make mistakes. It's fine to make mistakes. It's fine that you didn't listen, but at least be like, wow, yeah, okay, we see how this really caused a lot of problems and, what can we do? And I spent 3 weeks to build better shaders and abstract the pipeline, and their argument is like, well, we want to get it right. And you're like, well, what about the 7 years of pain that you caused? You're not, I mean, it's not hard to write an abstraction layer. It wouldn't be hard to document the stuff so that we actually can know what's changed, right? But they chose not to do that. At every step, they chose to make it worse. And
hide the fact.
Yeah. And so, if they hate me now, fine. I don't care. Whatever. I'm going to state my opinion, and if you don't listen, it's going to get louder. So, you either hear me and admit that you've heard it, right? And that there are problems or whatever, or don't. And then I'm going to just get louder and, So
what about Jason mucking about with the Unreal stuff? Taking all that Unreal money and going over there?
Well, it's funny. So I have a lot of friends who work there. Basically my engine team at Turbine is all over there now, or a bunch of them anyway. And I love some of the tech that Unreal does, but it's not a super configurable engine. And so when I looked at all the things that I would potentially want to do, they all involved either changing the engine source, which means you can't really sell it on a store, right? Or this, if you do a C++ plugin over there, then it becomes difficult because you have to keep it up to date with all the different versions in C++, and there's no auto updating system. There's no, you can't just compile something for one version and then expect it's not going to link in another one, right? C++ is not like C#. It's not as simple. I don't mind writing in C++. That's fine. But then if you want to make something that can distribute well on their asset store that's like a tool, you pretty much want to build it in Blueprint, and you have to do all the shaders in a shader graph. And again, large systematic things like I do are not done well in a shader graph. And so, I look at the way they render terrain, which again, with Nanite, things are changing, but there's interesting things could be done there. But the way they render terrain is they generate a shader for every combination of material count that's on the terrain. So they generate all these shaders so that they can, not sample as many textures on certain terrain chunks. And then artists actually have to deal with that. So it's even though you can get really great results over there, and the guy who's doing all the auto texturing stuff clearly knows what he's doing. The fundamental optimizations that I brought through Microsplat and Megasplat, they're not, I can't do them over there unless I get out of the shader graph and had a real text-based shader pipeline and was able to change the way that their stuff renders, and because they don't have support for texture arrays and things like that, and so I'd have to add that support, which again, there's floating around, people have done it. It's all doable, but Unreal is much more set up as a production engine for a team where you build what you need, and if it doesn't work for you, you go add the features to the engine. It's not set up like Unity where they kind of expect everything to be scriptable. I mean, the greatest thing about Unity is the fact that they've taken a very comfortable language to write in C# and bound it to a incredibly scriptable game engine, right? And every time they close off hooks, in the shader graph, they close off the ability to add your own nodes. The audio system, the audio mixer is unscriptable. Part of Unity dies every time they do that, of what makes it special.
Yeah.
And so, that's always been my feedback to them is open the APIs,
You're
make it
forgetting who
scriptable.
you are.
Huh?
They're forgetting who they are when there's like that.
Exactly. What made them win was that they had this like pretty nice, workflow, and they were very customizable. And like to an extent, like when I first came to Unity, I'd been working in custom engines for 25 years, and I never would have thought that you could have an engine that's this scriptable, right? I thought like, oh, it'd be slow, be all these problems, but it's like it's very well done. Like the original vision is very good, and then burst and all these things are wonderful. Like I'm happy they're focused on performance, but they need to maintain that level of usability and scriptability, right? And burst is, all the jobs burst stuff, that's all about scriptable, right? It's just that some of the core parts of the engine they've been doing a lot more internal classes and locking people out of things, and I think that's a huge mistake. Yeah.
And on that note, Chad are asking me to announce the winner of the raffle.
Oh, yeah. By the way, if I could change the terrain API, I could at least double the editor speed of this thing.
Oh.
Of updates, like easily, because it's the biggest, like that API, which like really hasn't changed since Unity 2, I think, is the biggest impediment that I have in this whole thing.
Yeah, but that's what everyone complains about whenever they talk about Unity.
Yeah. So I think the other systematic thing, like, so we were joking around on a forum with a bunch of friends recently about Unity, and I changed my like role to be, because you have your title on there, and I changed mine to be Unity CEO, and so we were all like joking around about it. Which is a job I would not want, but it was funny. And but the biggest thing I would do is just keep somebody on every system. You know what I mean? Like, when's the last time that somebody really took a look at like the project browser or the console, right, and said like, how can I improve this? Does it need things? And like, everything gets abandoned. And so like that audio API for the mixer, right? Like it's been since Unity 5. And they were like, yeah, we're going to open it all up when we know what it is, because, public APIs are a big thing. It's Unity 5, like 5.0, and it has not been changed since.
So
right?
I always thought they would have like product management teams for each area of that, like to be focused on, like owners of all that.
It's very like, hey, we think that system's done enough. We're going to take your whole team and dump it onto this other thing.
Like we need the next shiny thing.
When I ran the engine team at Harmonix, everything had an owner, and it was listed in the file. And if somebody left, we had to figure out who the new owner was. And then we would give them a task to work on that system to improve it in some way so that they could understand a bit of it. So your owner might not really know the whole system, but at least you had somebody to talk to who was responsible for that system, where the bugs flow to for that system, and where just ownership lives. And then every other sprint, we had a week where it was the person's choice about what they wanted to improve of their systems. And they would go, and what would happen is they'd go and do all those little tasks that the artists are always asking for, but they never can get into the schedule, right? All those little improvements, like, like one of them that we had at one point, like, you can do like 1 + 1 in here and you get 2. Like those little features get ripped off the schedule all the time because they're like not important or whatever, but those are what make a tool great. And when a company stops doing those types of little quality of life improvements, this is why like literally at Harmonix, when the 3D Studio Max representative would come every year, we would hand him the same list from the last year with the last year's date on it. You know what I mean? Because they just never fixed anything that we actually wanted fixed. They would always come and show off these new features that we didn't need, and they wouldn't fix the thing that had been bugging us for 4 years, right? And that's what happens when these companies get large. They lose track, and the cost of making any changes now has to go through 8 teams, and they got to run it by this team and that team and that team, and you're like, and eventually you're just like, well, screw it. Like, so that's what they're fighting, right? Is this intense level of bureaucracy, and this is why they make new systems rather than fixing old ones, because you can get a new system approved. But little things are pulling teeth, and it's
You
unfortunate.
need justify internal budget for fixing something old that's been there. People have lived with it for a long time. And if it wasn't good, they wouldn't still be around using it.
Yeah, I think the way to do that is not to try to get all those things on the schedule or even build a team that just does that stuff, because the bureaucracy will have a way to conquer it. It's really to give, you hire all these smart people. Like I don't, Unity grew fast, right? So there's going to be a cost in that. Maybe there's some people that aren't great or whatever, but like I suspect that most people that work at Unity are wicked smart and have passion for what they're doing and want to make great software. And so you give those people the freedom. Again, if I owned the console, right, and it's just something that I own and I get a week here and there to go make it better, then I'm like, all right, I'm going to go make this thing better. I'm going to pull in that little quality of life improvement that drives me crazy that we don't have, instead of like everything being on like a big schedule that's been agreed upon by a committee, And I think that's the thing is like large companies hire really smart people and then make them dumb, right? By chaining them to all these processes that make the managers feel safe, when in reality excellence comes from small teams following a passion. Like Nanite wasn't 100 programmers on a big mission. It was essentially like one guy who was like, we got to virtualize geometry, and then a couple people that really helped him out, right? Like as he was on this quest. And I think that's the way great software gets made. I don't think it's made by committee. You can feel the personality leach out of software when too many people are involved. And, as much as it might produce like a more like two-spec software, there's something like, as screwy as surface shaders are or whatever, you can see Ars's personality in that system, right? Like where he made his choices and why he made them. And there's an angle there about how to solve some of the problems with shaders. And to me, that's always like, there's like a crux of code still having that angle in it that I love, right?
I love the chat saying like, doing things for the shareholders is the most annoying way for companies to lose sight of quality experiences. Akil was saying that the insane dropping of features for the last 2 years has been truly saddening.
Yeah, I think it really comes down like, Ars tried to make a group that would be the quality of life group. And he really did, I think that was his kind of last stand, trying to get stuff done. And I think it was a noble cause. I remember when he was talking about it on Twitter, I was just like, I am so happy to hear this. But, the machine is large and hard to change. But I think the only way that really happens is like, great, this is the amount of time we spend on things that move the needle for the shareholders because we have to do that, right? And then there's some personal time where people work on what they're passionate about, what they, really want to improve about the editor, which is different than like Unity Hack Week, which is a wonderful idea, right? Of like, hey, let's go use our tools and like, try to make something really cool or that we're passionate about. But like, they need that time for like improving the little things in their systems. And that starts with having owners for systems that are continually thinking about how to make those systems better instead of them being sort of static things. And, obviously all this stuff comes with like, when you iterate on software fast, it's really fun as an engineer, but it comes with a lot of breakage. And so they have this delicate balance between like, a massive process to get stuff into release to make sure it's stable so it doesn't break anyone's projects and cause backwards compatibility errors. Like they have a lot of overhead that's justified because when Unity was younger, everyone was complaining about how unstable it was, and so they put in all these processes to help with that, which are now making it very hard for, I think, small changes to get through, small improvements and stuff. But, this is the battle. I mean, nobody's ever had a 5,000 person game engine company before. You know what I mean? They're in uncharted territories.
It's insane about how quickly they grew. I love it. Jason dropping the truth bombs non-stop. So you're saying, let them be creative and then fire them like they fired the Gagaya team.
I do think it's it's interesting because they saw a lot of problems from your guy, if you follow the threads on shaders and URP combinatoric problems that they're having with variants, it's like they reached that point where it was painful. And then it was right at that point where it's really painful that the team got let go. And I think, yeah, you might have thought you found a bunch of problems from it, but after you fix those, what's behind it? What's the next group, right? Like, because that's the stuff that we all get frustrated by. Like, I shipped a game with 32,000 asset bundles on Unity 5.2, and the wheels were just falling off the car as we were driving, and like it gotten it up to speed finally, and we ended up fixing bugs in the Unity source code, but that's it's I find it unfortunate. I don't find it surprising. I don't find it I'm sure they have other things that they're learning from too. Like, I don't fully buy the argument that people make about Unity. Like, they're like, oh, if they just made a game, then they would understand. It's like, I think the problem's bigger than that. I think like they've made stuff internally, and they do actually send people out and listen to teams and find out what their problems with and actually help them with their problems, right? They have these engineers that'll go out and help you ship your game. So so they run into that stuff. It's just again, turning the boat really hard. Epic is that's one thing they're really good at. Like, Fortnite wasn't working. I don't know if people remember this, but it was a totally different game, and they literally just picked up the company and went another direction to make it work. And now it's like this huge thing. And I don't, I have friends who work there, and I still don't understand how they just come in one day and they're like, this is our new direction, and everybody just is like, okay.
Yeah, because indecision's worse than no decision. And so make a decision, pivot. And if it worked, it worked. And if it didn't, it didn't. But then you can always pivot again. I love a chat going, winner. Let's go, announce the winner already. All right, I'm going to announce the winner because anytime I take a breath, we won't. Okay, drum roll. Can we get a drum roll from the ambient audio from... I
don't have a drum roll sample.
Do your friend's Chinese... play your friend's Chinese noise. What's it called? Zaya?
It's a Asian instrument it's like a long instrument with a whole bunch of strings. And
yeah, what's it called?
A zang, I think. Where is it? Yeah, zang.
Okay. Is it playing? I can't hear it. Right, give me 3 seconds of that.
All right.
And the winner is Merciless Enemy. Merciless Enemy has just won the Microverse collection. Dun, dun, dun. You need to speak up or forever hold your peace. Now, who was it in chat that said earlier that they bet it's full-time mod, I think, was saying, I bet it's going to be Sengoku who's going to win. Congratulations, Merciless Enemy. Full-time mod earlier said he didn't realise that those stamps were actually made by Roland. And he's already gone out and bought them all. So it's like, yeah, how did you go and purchase all of those stamp-its when it says Roland ink on them and not realise they were Roland? How is that possible? How did you add them to your cart and not realise? Come on. Oh my word. So Merciless, now that you've won, you have to watch this interview back from the beginning to see just how to add all of these cool features. Here we go. I can see your screen again. I was close up on your beautiful face, Jace. So you can play about with the splines, the hearts content. Don't forget, if you are using 2021, go into the splines folder in the packages and extract that zip file and then import the package in.
And I would actually suggest, if you're just like, messing around, just use 2022.2 because there is a crash right now with detail rendering that I can't seem to get around in 2021. But I'll hopefully.
Is 2022 stable? Is it good?
It's about as stable as 2021 is for me. But again, I guess your mileage is going to vary on what you're using. So, what the detail system was rewritten for it, and so it has new features now about like aligning things to terrain and stuff like that that 2021 doesn't have. And so I think when they rewrote that system, they fixed whatever problem I'm running into on 2021, which also had a rewritten detail systems because they added instancing support. It's not like the compute based, like indirect kind of stuff, but it's instance now. And that's where the crash lies. Basically, if I tell it not to instance the terrain, it won't crash, but or the details, but then it's just way too slow. So yeah, I emailed why I don't try to contact the union guys directly, I know, but this was one where I'm
Why don't
like,
you use a
hey,
fake name when you contact them?
well, then they wouldn't know who it was.
Yeah, no, I know, but then they might answer.
I mean, anytime I deal, or almost anytime I deal with those guys one to one, it's great. Like when you can get their attention on something, they get stuff done. It's just it's like the collective. Like I used to always joke the best way to get Unity to fix anything is to scream on Twitter about it, and it's true. And like that's just
That is
wrong,
true.
like it shouldn't
That is
be
true.
the best way. So, but it is what it is.
Should I stop using 2017 now then?
I'm not going to tell anybody like what version to use for their project because every version's got something, you know. Um, I I I don't know. Like I thought 5.6 was really good, and I think it was 2018 when it finally got mature into the LTS. Like usually, like the LTSs don't even get stable until like the
Yeah,
12th patch.
I was about to say, I've given up believing just because it says OTS that I should start using it.
Right. No, I think it's usually a few patches into LTS because I think what happens is it starts coming up and they're like, well, I want to get this in, and there's this natural tendency to try to get stuff in to whatever date there is, right, that they have for that. And yeah, and then it just takes time to find bugs. Like I didn't find this crash bug until after we launched. So it's like, okay, well, I'm stuck with it now and I got to figure something out. Um, but but that's the way software is. It's like you do your best to balance all these things and hope things work out.
You got to sacrifice a chicken to the gods. Kuka was raised. Not you're not allowed to say Godot engine in chat when talking to Jason because then we'll just spend another 2 hours talking
Oh, about
about Godot. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's not God, it's Godot. It's like
uh,
waiting for Godot. That was the joke. That it would, the play Waiting for Godot.
yeah.
Yeah, it's like, waiting around for something to ship. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I've looked at it a little bit, but um, we'll see how 4 comes out. It's
What about
does not really,
Lumberyard?
so, huh?
Why does nobody talk about Lumberyard anymore?
It's dead. It's dead the moment they bought it.
I was actually at one point going, you know what? I'm going to start trying some Lumberyard stuff. And I opened it up and I was like, yep, I'm closing that down. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Crytek did good stuff with their version of that engine, but like it never caught on as a licensable thing. I think it was probably even more down the Unreal path of like it does what we need and that's it. I do think there's a opportunity for somebody to make a really scriptable engine that's kind of Unity like.
There you go.
But
That's your next project, Jace.
God no.
You,
No, if I had a
you'll,
team,
you'll do it in a couple of months. I know you.
if I had a team, I'd do that. And making engines is super fun. Like when we had the engine we built a Guitar Hero on, and then it was kind of like it didn't even support stereo sound files. Like it was basic,
By the way,
right?
my wife wants to know: are you getting like royalties?
No, no. We got the way the money I got on that project worked was we got bought by MTV, and so then I got a big amount from the stock I owned, and then We got bonuses off of various games for passing certain amounts, and then what happened is that uh, they owed the stockholders, of which all of us were. They owed us so much money after Rock Band 3 that they sued us to try to get out of paying us. It was like $150 million. And so then we went through about 6 years of legal
Oh
battles.
my God.
Our biggest investor was actually a lawyer, and so his law firm took it over because he had like, he was going to get like 250 million from it or something, and I don't know the amount, but like a lot of money. And he just went after them like viciously and won every single case. And so yeah, that the whole Guitar Hero story, like
So
Rock Band.
he won for all of you, not just for himself, though. Surely.
Oh no, he won for all of us.
That's a really shitty thing to do.
Harmonix is probably the best company I've ever worked at. Like, they definitely screwed some things up, and I could look at all those, but they really did try to treat everyone really well. Like when I went there before Guitar Hero, and we were a struggling company, like, they had health insurance that was 100% covered and no copays. They paid all the copays for you through another service, and then like when we sold, there was a guy who had joined a week before we sold, and they forward all of his shares. So basically, like, they could have said, well, you only get like 0.01% of your shares because they take years to earn out, and then just he would have gotten $20 or something. But instead, they like forward advances everyone's shares, so we owned all of our shares as part of the deal. And so they were a great company to work for, and also just a very creative studio that was really amazing. Like, and that arc of going from this little studio being like, we're gonna make a guitar game, I hope we can break even, to like, what it became. Like, for 2 years we were the largest drumstick manufacturer in the world,
Wow.
because we called up the drumstick companies and we're like, yeah, we're gonna need like 8 to 10 million pair, and they were like, what? They were like, there's no way, and not at that price point. So we're like, all right, let's build a factory, and it was crazy being this tiny little company and just killing it, and we had hit after hit. It was like we did all the Guitar Hero stuff. We then competed with ourselves because the name went with the publisher who sold to Activision, and we were sold to MTV. So then we created Rock Band, and we're faced with like, how do we make a game that competes with the game we just made that we really love, right? Like, how do you even go about doing that? Yeah. And then, did all that, had Dance Central, which was people don't remember this, but that was a big hit too. And when we were building that same time, we were building Rock Band, and so we were just knocking everything out of the park that we touched, and I think it was just because the studio culture was really good at the time, and like, and we just had a lot of luck. Like, the fact that year all the consoles got delayed, like the year that Guitar Hero released, and so there really wasn't much else on the shelf. And then our president Mike, he wrote to all the fans of the previous games and was like, go to Best Buy and ask them to set up Guitar Hero, because they'll set it up for you to try any game and then play it in the store. And so like all of our like fans from the previous games went out and did that, or some of them did. And then suddenly Best Buy is like, why is there a crowd around this game? You know what I mean? And it was just like all these factors came together to make that such a big hit. And it was, we didn't even realize what we had until a year into it. I remember the moment I realized it. I went to the Game Developers Conference, and I was wearing a Guitar Hero t-shirt, and I practically got mobbed like it was a Beatle or something, and then every party that year was like 80-foot wall with Guitar Hero on it, and we're like, oh, I think this might sell. Like, so it was a hell of a ride. And yeah, I mean, I have all these crazy stories from it. Sitting in meetings, or like I almost knocked Jimmy Buffett over in the bathroom one day. and like I was in this meeting, we had to get Fender and Gibson to sign to cross license some patents to each other, and they're not friendly, right, with each other. And the guy from Gibson had brought the guitar player from the Scorpions there, and I asked Brian, who did the game Thumper. He was sitting next to me, And I'm like, Brian, why is he was dressed like it was 1984 still, like on Rocky, like a hurricane, winds of change. And I'm like, why is he still wearing that? And Brian's like, well, if he takes it off, he's admitting it's over. And I was like, you're so right. But it was such a weird thing to go from this tiny little company to like working with the Beatles and watching it all get locked down too, because like, once you have the Beatles like masters in your place, there's security. You know what I mean?
That's nuts.
So yeah, it was a wild ride. It was super fun, and yeah, I mean, it's a lot of hard work, but it was all worth it. So.
And you're still doing all the consultancy, and you're working still in the industry. Like, and then the quick questions in chat, like, why are you doing the Unity asset store stuff?
What I like about it, which sometimes Unity thinks this is not true, but I like being my own boss. Like I've done so much stuff at this point that having to work for someone else who like thinks like they know what they're doing but doesn't have like a tenth of my experience like is kind of difficult, right? Because you're either like sitting there being like, no, 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 like just let me do this, or you're like fighting with them, which is no fun. And so I only take contracting jobs, which I think will be something really fun to work on and where there's no BS going on. And the second like there's any BS going on that I have to deal with, I'm like, you know what? I don't need this because I don't really have to work. Like, so I do assets because I like making stuff. I like making tools a lot, and I still love what I do as a career. And it's a nice like, ambient income. So like, it's like not enough to live on, but then I don't have to worry about filling in the gaps in contracting or like, like if I was just contracting, I could make more money, but I'd be working all the time. And like you take a job and then you're 40 hours a week, with this, if I'm like not feeling it that week, I don't do it. And so there's a lot of flexibility there, which is I think a big reason why I do it. And also like nobody's hiring me to make the things that sometimes I want to make, like if I want to really go deep into texturing terrains, well, there are people out there that want various features, but they don't, you become sort of subservient to what they need and want or think they want, as opposed to what
their view of the world of what they're trying to
yeah
create.
yeah and I've worked too hard and have too much talent at what I do to like just schlep along taking orders for money. Like I don't need to eat shit, sorry, for money. And so yeah, so that's what I like about it. It comes with a lot of things I don't like. And sometimes like Andrew who runs the asset store will try to talk to me like he's my boss, and I'm just like, I don't know, you're not. Like you can kick me off the store or you can take my stuff, but you can't tell me how to run my business, so yeah, I like the independence, and I like working with the users I have who are cool. Like there's a lot of good people in the community who like just will hop in and like make cool stuff that you didn't think about or come up with a workflow you didn't think about, and you're like, oh, like if Roland comes to me bitching about something, I listen to him because he's out there like making these things really fast and like using my tools every day. And so like, if you're just working with a company, you're working with 3 artists or something, or, if it's a big company, 30, but you don't get this wider range of opinions and stuff and feedback. So there's a lot I like about that. I could do without the people coming and screaming at me because they don't know what they're doing, or like, or because I.
But that's the fun stuff.
Huh?
That's the true fun stuff. People screaming and shouting at you because they don't read the README and they're looking for a zip file.
Yeah, it's all stupid, but, I mean, it's like, sometimes I wonder if I'm being a hypocrite because I'm screaming at Unity, but like, I know what I'm doing. You know what I mean? It's like I'm criticizing very specific things with them that they have not acknowledged that they've screwed up, right? Like once they start acknowledging like, oh, this is a problem and we need to fix it, and we're going to have something, like now that they've announced block shaders, I'm a lot more calm about it, because it's like there's something on the roadmap, and we'll see how it comes out. It might be insufficient in some way or whatever, but like at least they're trying to fix the problem now, and so yeah, but it's like sometimes somebody buys a $5 asset and they expect you to code their game for you, and you're just like, oh. Like you want me? I'm $200 an hour, and like if I like the project, like it's.
My favorite is when they want you to work on it for free, don't even pay you, and then start bitching on it. Although I have to say there was.
It's sometimes you have people who just don't know, right? Like they're like, yeah, I'd pay you for this, and they think like they're going to pay $50 for you to spend 8 hours doing something, right? They don't realize, like, as a 30-year professional in the game industry who's like a graphics and optimization specialist at this point, right?
Well, that's the thing, because the asset store is full of different people. You got people who are kids in their bedrooms who are not even at university yet making assets.
Which, if they're nice, I'm like happy to help.
No, exactly. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But then there's people who are many years in the industry, but there's no, unless they actually write it on their bio page on the asset store, you can't really tell what's the pedigree of the person making the asset. So I always send an email like to an asset publisher, like if I stumble across anything, and I go like, what stuff have you worked on? And when they come back and go, oh yeah, I've worked on a few games, been a freelancer on a few games, blah blah blah. Like, oh, that's awesome! You've actually got experience working on games, right. which makes a massive difference, especially as an artist.
Yeah,
because they know, because you go, wow, these models are fantastic. It would never work.
Right. Yeah. No, there's there's all these different skill sets out there, and I think the fun part is that there's a lot of good people in the community, and there's a lot of interesting information and feedback you get that I just I built tools for years in game studios, and I would have to appease a couple artists, but they didn't care like if it took a lot of setup, or they didn't care that it, like when I released Megasplat, like it was again focused on like a specific optimization technique or something that would break open new doors, which is kind of how my stuff usually works and why I got inspired to do Microverse or whatever. But I didn't realize like I was writing for people who had like no understanding whatsoever of how things worked, right? And so like, over the years, it's like learning how to write for that audience, and an audience that doesn't want to crack open a manual and dig into something, like game development is becoming a hobby, right? It's becoming an entertainment pastime for people as much as it is a career, and that's a very different audience. They need very different things, and so with each product, I kind of like, I build stuff differently than I would if I was building it for a studio.
That's why Unity needs the subscription revenue model for support.
Having a reoccurring revenue model would be great, but I don't think subscription fits most people, and I don't think it fits like the particular user base. Like, like if I was building a hobby game, I wouldn't want to sign up for monthly payments of stuff.
No, but I'm saying like there are certain assets that require so much continuous support that the asset publisher needs to have some kind of support model.
The model that I would rather people get used to is the idea of the yearly upgrade, because the yearly upgrade can pay for support, because that's when the difficulty happens, right? Like Unity changes a bunch of stuff, and it means if you just want to hang out on Unity 2017 and not pay for that stuff, you can, like go ahead, because I think, like me personally, I hate subscription software, and I hate like I like buying software and then knowing I have it, and I don't like having to connect to the internet to use it and all these things. But I do understand like software requires maintenance, and like code rots. It literally rots with you doing nothing to it. and because all the code around it changes, right? And so to me, the way to do that is to tie it to those changes, which is the yearly upgrade, right?
You need to deprecate as well, like was it the nature vendor ones who do that? So you got to deprecate your old version, like the 2020 version, and then say, oh, you want customer support for the 2020 version? Well, that's deprecated. I'm not offering customer support for them anymore. You'll have to have the 2021 version.
Keep that support around. Like
that's the thing. But the ones who are doing the upgrade are the ones basically saying, look, if you want to keep having customer support, you need to pay the £100 for the next year.
Well, I guess the problem there is the value proposition, right? Like, so I think I got off, like, the one good thing about the SRPs was that people, because of all the noise I make and some other people made, people began to realize, like, supporting SRPs is actually a big deal for shaders. And so I haven't had a lot of people, like, I've had some people be like, well, you have to pay for the SRP version of the adapter for Microsplat. And it's like, those adapters, the money that I've charged for them, have not paid back for the work that was required to get to the SRPs, like, not even close. And I sell a lot of those adapters. But they've paid for some of it, and I think people understood why they were paying for it. If you have somebody just breaking an asset every year, or taking it off the store so that you have to buy the latest one, that doesn't feel so great. So, like, the ideal thing is that people understood what maintenance really costs, and on some assets it's less, right? Like, if I don't use any SRP features, I'm not having yearly upgrades because compared to the SRP stuff, my costs are so drastically lower, right? But I don't think it's bad, like, if people just started expecting that, because even with something that doesn't break like an SRP, there's still a lot of maintenance costs involved, and new sales, when an asset starts to slip down, new sales no longer cover just the support costs alone, right? And this is why my Discord is gated and all these things. These are all attempts to make sure that you're serious about talking to me before you start, right? Like, I'm not answering anything.
Your time costs money.
It does, and my time is expensive, and I'm donating it right now, right? And so if somebody comes in with attitude, they're banned, because I don't need to donate my time to you. You bought my software, you didn't buy my time. And my time costs way more. We're selling discount software. Like, a system like this, if I was, building this and selling it 10 years ago before Unity, this would have been like a $40,000, $60,000 system. You know what I mean? And I would have sold it to less people, but it would have been professional studios that needed a landscape engine or whatever. And, it would have been a very different dynamic. We're not in that dynamic anymore. We're in the dynamic of very low cost software. And so the result of that is that, like, it's not like you can get personalized support from Unity, and the crazy thing to me is that people, when they know something is written by one person, they expect more from that one person than they do from a 5,000 person company, right? Which is worth billions of dollars. Like, they expect to talk to me 10 minutes after they post something and have me cowtailed to their needs, yet they don't write the CEO of Unity before they've even opened the manual. You know what I mean? So there's this funky expectations we have that, people who are writing asset store plugins should be super grateful that we've bought their plugin, when it's like, the second you start talking to us is the second that sale may not make sense for us anymore, right? Because, like, a sale of Microverse, right? So after I pay Unity their cut, it's on sale right now. So that's $70 a copy after Unity takes their cut. Then, because it goes under self-employment tax, that's even a higher tax. So I end up with like a 50% tax rate on that. So we're really looking at what actually lands in my pocket is about $35, right? I can charge $200 an hour for my time. So if you're taking more than 8 minutes or something of my time, I'm losing money on that sale by spending my time helping you instead of working for someone. And
that's nuts, isn't it? When you think about it like that.
But that's the truth, yeah. Right? And so, like, and I choose every day to spend a bunch of my time supporting people over making money because I give a shit about my software. Sorry, cussing again.
Oh, Nibble Note says there's a slight adjustment in there, in his view. Your attention is more important than your time, because you're already selling your time and assets, but your active attention is extremely limited. So it's your attention.
Right. Well, there's also task switching costs. Like sometimes I'm working on a contract and I'm answering support questions at the same time, and I can get lost in the task, switching, and then I have to like sit there and be like, okay, what am I charging this person again? Okay, let me shut off Discord for an hour, get this task done, and focus. So it's all this stuff is cost, and this is why. All the time people are like, wow, that's a great asset and it sold really well, and where's the guy who wrote it? It's like, well, he decided it wasn't worth his time because it's expensive to support your community. And
there's loads. I mean, there's quite a few that I've spoken to, and they're like, well, I've got personal family stuff going on, and I can't have the distraction. I can't be. And I was like, well, there's other people that could support it if you want to, to hand over, and you'd continue getting your money and blah blah blah. And they were like, no, it's not even worth that right. amount of extra time and effort to organize that. It makes even worse.
Well, and like the asset store has been like, well, why don't you hire somebody to do support? And you're like, so I can earn drastically less money and have to answer questions just from them as opposed to everyone else, because like, who's going to support my stuff and know how to do it? So it just doesn't scale. And I think one of the, I think for it to scale to the next level, there has to be a kind of a division, which, people are not going to love, which is that hobbyists get less support directly from authors, and companies actually pay for their assets correctly. So that, when a company, I get every day, somebody's like, yeah, we're using this thing. And as soon as they say we, I'm like, okay, you're not paying your license correctly. Because I think about 3 times in my life, I've seen a multi-purchase order come through, right? And everyone's on these little teams or whatever, and they're supposed to have like 1 copy for every person on the team, depending on how you interpret the badly written Unity license. Or if it's an art asset, you buy 3 for the whole team, and no one does it. And so, when I see a game ship and I'm like, there was a 30-person on that team, and they raised $15 million, and you bought 1 copy of my software and shipped with it. It's like, this is why, and I'm not saying like we should have DRM on all this stuff, because I hate that too. I'm saying that when you go in the asset store and you're a company, there should be a way for you to see how many copies you need to purchase, right? And you can, a different pathway where they can try something out. They can buy 1 copy and try it out. But then there should be an audit tool that goes through and tells them, hey, here's how you get legal on your project. Because a lot of them, they don't do this with Photoshop. They don't do this with 3D Studio Max, right? And they're trying.
But they can feel it's okay to do it
because it's a single person instead of a company, and also because again, like, if anybody who's ever been through a software audit at a company, when you get reported as being, pirating some of your software, like, it's a nightmare. I mean, it makes your life hell. So they do not want that to happen. And so they purchase proper licenses from Unity, right? But Unity, here's the thing I tell the musicians sometimes when they're young. I don't know where I got it from. Somebody else said it first, but basically, like, the fundamental thing is if you're playing in bars, is you're there to sell beer, right? You're not there. They don't care about your music, not really. What they care about is getting patrons in who sell beer. So if you can get your fans to buy more beer, you'll get invited back, and we're asset store developers are really here to sell Unity. Unity loves to go around and be like, you can buy all this stuff in the asset store, and you can, you want a visual scripting system, just go buy the one you want, But because the ecosystem is not supporting publishers, the software is not being supported as it should, or even getting to the professional level it should. And so that's all kind of an illusion, right? Like, a lot of companies ban use of assets, or they only have a very small number on an approved list. And I always looked at assets when I was working for companies as like, okay, I'm bringing this in, and let's look at, like when I would buy an asset, I would look at how much code it was. How many code files are in there? Is this a giant framework, or is this just a thing that solves the thing I need? And because I basically treat it as, if I'm going to put that code in our project, I own that code,
Yeah.
and I have to support it, right? That's not
which is
good.
another reason why you go, I'm just going to write it myself.
Yeah, yeah, and when you're fast, you can do that, right? Like, so a lot of times that's the answer. Or I'll use it for prototyping to see if it's a feature we want, and then I'll write my own version. Or, so there's still value there. Don't get me wrong. Like, you shouldn't, companies should not be afraid of assets like they sometimes are.
But again, it comes down to knowing what is the pedigree of the asset, and you know
Right.
that by doing something which is called contacting the asset seller, or
Well,
having a look at their bio, like their information. If they've got a website, they've got a history, if they've got a
what I've
CV.
suggested to people is, like, if you're a game studio and you are placing a big bet on, say, terrain, it's like, hire the guys who built your system, right, to do your customizations. Because even if you only hire them for a couple days or whatever, they like will really key into what you need. And I brought Leonard from Vegetation Studio into a job I was working on, Kerbal Space Program 2, because I'm like, okay, I could write a vegetation engine for you, but I know this guy who's got a really good one who can customize his, right? And so, if we get to an ecosystem where companies are more likely to pay their fair share, right, and they're more likely to contract with you for customizations, things like that, then you'll start to see the quality of the software increase. You'll start to see authors not abandon their stuff because it becomes an actual income stream. And then we sort of like weed the garden a little bit with the hobby users who come in angry and like build systems like, invoice verification, things like that. Because when there's a little bit of friction between the two, then when you actually get to the plate to talk to the person, you're like often like, you're a little like, here's my chance, right? Like, if a Unity engineer contacts you after you've been dealing with a bug for 3 weeks, you might be mad about the delay or whatever, but like, you take it seriously because it's not just right there the second you decide you want to whine, right? So as much as like I like the idea that everybody can, be egalitarian and whatever, there needs to be some sort of sorting of things to allow this community and its ecosystem to grow to a professional level. And until the asset store takes the reins and does some of that, it's not going to happen. And you'll still see a lot of people abandoning their assets and stuff because it's not a good job. It really isn't. So yeah, that's why we see these, top selling assets just, after a year or two, those guys disappear.
We had this. I was playing the other day. We had Your Normal Games Chris, who makes Neo FPS, a wonderful FPS system, on the chat, and we had Reversed in the chat as well. We're playing a game, one of those zombie games together, and the conversation was like, so how much support are you doing? How much money are you making off the store? And it literally is a case of, if you're making art and you're not needing to do a lot of customer support, then yeah, you're having a much more relaxed, easy life on the asset store. And the funny thing is that with Chris, he's actually a 3D artist and has worked doing 3D art on games, yet is selling it code assets. And he's like, I might start releasing some art stuff instead as well.
Yeah. Well, like, I have an integration with Digger, and Digger's a great asset in a lot of ways. But I guess the guy hasn't been responding. So what happens is the Digger users come over and try to like blame me for everything that's wrong in Digger, because they're like, well, you have an integration, so you should just handle this. And I'm like, it's literally my integration spits out a shader which it uses. So if it's not a shader error, it's not me, and like, but it's like, that's the nature. They don't know who to blame. And if the person's not there that they think is the person to blame, then they come and blame me.
Oh yeah, you can shout until you find someone to scream at. It's like the angry man shouting at the cloud.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like, there's all these things of like, people are like, like earlier, somebody was like, did you write an integration for this? I didn't know what feature they were actually asking about, but like, it's like, okay, do I want to take on the risk of now having all these extras? Like, Digger is one of my number one reasons I get support things, like requests from people. And, you know, I haven't changed anything in that integration in 2 years or whatever it's been. And because my part works, you know, but he's got a lot of code and it probably breaks when they cross Unity version boundaries and, you know, or has little issues.
Do you have a keyword like AI thing that if someone's mentioned dig or anything, and then it just puts them to the bottom of the ticket list?
I don't really have a ticket system. I have Discord, but yeah, I don't have anything like that.
You need to write yourself a quick Discord bot to support that.
It doesn't really matter what I say. You know, people have often, when they're angry, they've already made up their mind about everything before they've even, you know, bothered, and they just want to
That's
go.
the joy of the asset store, though. And do you know what? My wife was like, "It's a good thing you're streaming at 9 o'clock because it means you won't be up late. You're at work the next day." Now, normally, I lay in bed watching Hawaii 5.0 reruns, but this has taken my time slot of my Hawaii 5.0 reruns, and I've had so much more fun. Jace, I wish I could sit here chatting to you for another 2 hours, but now I actually officially have a job in the game industry.
What studio?
ABK. So
what is it?
Activision Blizzard King.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so I'm not connected to the Guitar Hero.
Right. Yeah. No, it's just, Activision's huge.
But the thing is, right? It's amazing the cult, because they're like, people saying about these huge companies and cultures and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It is such an amazing place to work. I mean, it's my in 3 decades of working, it's my favorite place now. Of working, because the teams who I'm working with, every single person is really great, a lot of fun, very inclusive, very caring. Like with my back in I'm still on probation, and they're like, the bosses are like, take time, as much time off as you need to recover. And I'm saying, yeah, I'm still on probation, doesn't matter, it's not how we work. Like, you take as much time as you need. It's better that you're 100% in your mind and your health. But I was like, I didn't want to miss workshops, so I'm in bed with like webcams like set to be turned off, so I could be there. And they had arranged so that I could join remotely into physical workshops via Zoom calls, so that I wouldn't miss out. Because I was like, I really don't want to miss out. And then they were like, you don't have to do this. Like, no, I really want to. I'm enjoying my job so much. I really want to be a part of this. I don't want to miss it.
I totally get it. Like a lot of the crunch, like there's the negative sides of crunch where people, are forced to crunch and they're just like, we're working on this game, it sucks. And, but when you're working on something you love, it's like, it's very hard to put it down sometimes. Like, I mean, I spit this thing out in a month, but, I is 100% focused on it. You know what I mean? So like, it's like you can get a lot of work done if you're like really passionate about what you're doing. But then you have to like pace yourself in other ways. You know what I mean? Like I sort of like when we're shipping this thing to the asset store, I was like fried for a few days, and so I just kind of didn't do a whole lot for a little while, and because that's how it goes. I don't think we're good marathon runners. I think we're really good, like the way a cheetah like can move real fast for a few minutes and then sort of needs a break. I think like that's kind of how I am with coding and stuff. So I need to like get it all out. And then once it's out, I need like a moment.
It was like 2 months working, 1 month off.
Yeah, well, I mean, sometimes that's what it is, and then I attend to my life or whatever, and so it's like that's another reason I like the asset store. It's not 40 hours a week; it's 60 and then 10.
And I was talking to, and I won't mention their name, another asset publisher, and it's not just them; a few done this, and it's been like 6 weeks since I've been out of commission, so I haven't looked at the asset store, I haven't really looked at Discord or emails or anything, nothing on YouTube, so I feel like ones that I had set to be pre-recorded and like it was in the backlog that I could just kind of churn out. And I was like, so what have I missed? What have you been working? How's your assets? Oh, I haven't even touched anything in over a month, just because I just wasn't in the zone.
Yeah. But I think humans, like, we do our best work when we are, and so like sometimes it's worth just not doing something until it's the right time.
Yeah.
You know, if I tried to make this 2 years ago when Roland started bugging me about it, it wouldn't have come out the same. Now was the time. I don't know why. It just was. So
it's like I used to paint. I was I would have called myself a traditional artist, like painting, sculpturing and stuff, because my 3D and 2D art on computers sucks so bad. And you'd be like looking at a canvas and go, I can't even draw a circle.
right.
And the other day, and I haven't drawn in ages, I just started doing like self-portrait sketches, like pencils, and did like 6 in a couple of days of like just mucking about. And that's, you got to be in the zone, and sometimes it takes a long time to be in it, and sometimes you could lose your mojo. My asset that I was working on, Messi's ultimate into keyword here, and that's the thing, because it was like, it started off as a skill system, then it was a character customization system, and then it was, I'll make an RPG system, and then it's, nothing's working, I don't want to touch it ever again, and then it's like, oh, it was working again, I might do this.
You need to focus it, you know.
So yeah,
Right,
you got to be in the zone. Well, Jace, thank you so much, buddy. You have a safe journey to Blighty. Enjoy yourself in the UK, and I'll, if I'm able to walk, I will come and stalk you and say, look, I've got bugs. Can you help me if I fall?
Well, yeah. If you find yourself up and about, let me know.
Oh, brilliant, mate! Thank you so much for the short notice coming on and for the presents, Roland. Thank you so much for all those amazing, I think 10 keys you gave us. Roland.
Give you a key.
Yeah.
After we hang up.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right, buddy. You take care.
Bye.
What a beautiful badger. If you want to see more of my crazy videos, click on the left side of your screen now, and down below there's that big juicy subscribe button, and right next to it is the magic bell that if you click it, it will tell you if I've got a new video coming out. Till next time.